What's up, everybody? It's your boy DJ Hot Mama Coco Bean, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast. On this week's episode, Joel and I will take a look at the world of movie news and movie trailers that dropped last week because I screwed up the recording last week, and then we will take a look at the movies that came out this week and review Coco, the new Pixar film, and Justice League because, just said last week I screwed up and you can all make fun of me now. So we will be reviewing Justice League and Coco. So what will we think about both of those? We're going to like one, dislike both, like both. Well, what's going to happen, guys? Well, you're going to have to sit down, relax, and find out. What's up, you crazy, beautiful people out there, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast, where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey guys, listen, if you were searching on the internet for some, just anything, literally anything, and you stumbled across this podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we can convince you to be one. This is episode 208, guys, and you know what that means. It is the 4-year anniversary episode, because stuff happened last week. I'll get into that in just a second. So we're going to celebrate it this week. 4 years doing this show for you guys. Congratulations, you made it this far, and I have not been arrested, or I'm not dead yet, so that's a good thing, I guess. 4 years doing this. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening every single week, and we will continue to do that until we're both dead. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. So, all right. So, if you're new to the show, welcome. Typically what we do is we'll go over some movie news and trailers that drop throughout the week and commentate on them for you guys, and then we'll review the big movies that come out on the week. And then, of course, box office results to accompany said movies. So the news is, yes, last week I screwed up big time. So we recorded a Justice League episode. We did the news, trailers, we did the review, and it wasn't until 2 hours and 30 minutes in that I realized that Joel was not recording, like at all. And so I was like, wait a minute. So we went almost 3 hours, the length of a Michael Bay Transformers film, and I realized that Joel wasn't even recording at all. And so I was talking to myself, and they would just dip to silence, and then myself silence, and so I was like, yeah, we gotta scrap this. So we pushed Justice League to this week, on top of reviewing Coco, the newest Pixar film, so you guys will get double dose. And it actually worked out pretty well, because there wasn't any significant news that dropped throughout the week or trailers, so we're just moving everything from last week to this week, so it actually worked out better anyways. So, but yeah,
there was literally one trailer that dropped this week, and it was some animated movie, and I feel like we could probably move that to another episode.
Exactly.
Or we could just never talk about it. It's something called, I didn't even watch it. I don't know what it is, but it's something called Smallfoot, and I assume that is a play on Bigfoot, in which case it's probably some like dumb high concept thing that's or low concept, however you think of that.
Well,
that
Joel,
was the only trailer that dropped.
I made it through the entire opening without even mentioning it because I didn't want to talk about it. But now that you did, there you go, folks. But speaking of the Joel stuff over there, Joel, how are we doing this week? Especially after the Thanksgiving holidays. Are you dead yet from food coma? Like, give me your prognostication there, sir.
Well, it was funny. So this week, my parents went off to Missouri. They stayed in Branson, which is a pretty awesome place. I'm fairly new at my job, so I didn't really feel comfortable asking off. They needed me for Black Friday, or for part of Black Friday, and so I just stayed home. I was home alone. I didn't actually eat any turkey or anything. I just ate pizza, and I literally watched movies all day on Thursday. I think I watched 6 movies, which is very rare for me. I usually don't enjoy that, but it was a lot of fun because I didn't even turn the alarm off in the house or unlock it or anything at all until the very late at night when I went over to my old Target that I used to work at and got a couple movies. So it was a very relaxing day. For those, I could say saying this till later, but for those who follow my writing on my website, the reason that I don't have a review of Coco up or Last Flag Flying or Three Billboards, which were the 3 movies I was going to review, is because I basically turned my brain off. Like I had no brain for writing anything, so I'll have those for you this week. But it was a very relaxing day, and I had closed at work the night before, so I got up late, and I worked on Black Friday, and that was pretty busy. So other than that, I mean, it was a pretty nice week.
Yeah, I mean, I spent Thursday just chilling with the fam, eating some food, definitely dying in a food coma, and then waking up like in Flatliners. And then Joel and I saw a movie on Tuesday, and since we saw it, we can't review it, we can't talk about it, but we did see the post, and we saw it quite early. And like I said, we can't talk about it yet. But expect a review or on the podcast way in the future, because we're not going to do that until
it's
January.
the January 14th episode.
Exactly, but we can let you know that we've seen it, and also we received a lot of screeners, so we got a lot of stuff coming for you guys. It's quite a magical Oscar season. I'm really proud to say that. Last year was great, and this year's even better. So but my week was pretty chill, and then just saw a bunch of movies and TV shows, and just kind of just did my thing, man. So without any further ado, let's get this started, because we wasted so much time last week, so we're not going to waste any time this week. But before we begin, just one last thing. Please spread this episode around. Let people know that this is the definitive movie podcast that you guys listen to. And also, if you don't want to hear about any of the movie news or trailers, and you just want to jump straight to the movie reviews, you can do just that. Now, obviously, if you're listening live, you can't do that because we haven't gotten there yet. But if you're listening to this, after the live recording, and you just want to jump straight to the Coco and Justice League reviews, I don't blame you. So you can do that. But until then, we got some news, Joel, that we have to cover, because my God, some interesting stuff has developed in the Hollywood world. And let's start out with this one. Starting with the first news story, is that, back in the 90s, Nintendo thought it'd be a great idea to kind of license their movie property or their game properties out for studios to take a crack at. And one of them was Infamous, and it kind of came out, and it was definitely the only film that John Leguizamo has ever done. It's kind of like one of those hidden gems in his career where it happened and then he just went away because he was embarrassed. That would be quite magical. It's the Super Mario Brothers movie that happened in the 90s, live action. It was basically like Blade Runner for kids, and it was really weird. So that happened, and that is definitely in pop culture. Now, obviously, they didn't do that well. So Nintendo has been hesitant ever since to license out their stuff. Rightfully so. But Illumination Entertainment, the wonderful studio behind Sing, which is a cash grab, Minions, cash grab, and Despicable Me is fine. That studio is going to take a crack at a all-animated Super Mario Brothers movie. I am actually curious about this. I'm okay with it. The thing we were talking about last week before, I realized that last week's episode was a disaster, is that I think what they're going to do is, kind of poke fun at itself and really kind of be self-aware as they do this project and make it, just kind of like a play on the whole damsel in distress thing. It could be very inventive and creative like the Lego movie. I'm actually, curious to see where they go with it, and I want to see Illumination do something different. They've been in the Minions and Despicable Me game for quite some time. Sing is just very bland, and I absolutely just hate it, especially when you have like wonderful, majestic animated films like Coco, and then you realize that Hollywood also has a dark side and does this cash grab bullshit called Sing. It's like, I can't trust Illumination Entertainment anymore. And they also did that live action hybrid Hop, which it looked gross. When I worked at the theater at the time, and I poked my head in and out of it. Anyways,
I avoided that one like the plague. I did not.
It looks like Peter Rabbit, but worse.
It's from the director. It's from the same director, I think, as Peter Rabbit.
Don't say that, because that makes me really just sad for that director. Anyways, I'm cool with this. I want to see what they do with it, and I think taking a different property will kind of break them away from the whole minion mold that they've kind of formed themselves as. And that's not even a hyperbole. They literally have the Minions introducing their logo name every single time a freaking movie comes up with their logo. So, that's their brand. I don't want it to be their brand, so let's do some different stuff. Joel, what do you think about this news? And do you have vivid, horrific, nightmarish memories of watching the live-action Super Mario Brothers movie?
I do, but like from very early childhood, I've never really gotten like the nerve to rewatch it. We do have I think we have like 3 copies of it at work. It's weird because it keeps coming in and people keep buying it. So I don't know what it is, but our specific store has like a huge market for the 1993 movie. Yeah, I mean, it was bizarre. It's a bizarre movie. It's not very good. It's not a disaster, I don't think. It's interesting, at least in a lot of ways. It's interesting in many of the wrong ways. But at least it's kind of spirited and different. Like you said, it's sort of Blade Runner for kids. It's very dark for a kids movie, and no wonder it's from the director of The Killing Fields from the 80s. So, in any case, Illumination taking it on. I'm kind of hesitant because it's them, and what Sing was for you, Minions was for me. I hate that movie. I thought it was something even lower than a cash grab, really mean spirited. I didn't see Despicable Me 3. I thought that the first 2 movies were fine. I thought Secret Life of Pets was fine. They make movies that are, except for Minions, colorful and painless. Hopefully Super Mario Brothers is fun and, kind of daffy and goofy, because I feel like that's going to be what people are looking for. And I just had a random thought that's separate from this. All of my thoughts this week are going to be new to people. The people listening live last week know what you thought, but so that's what I thought, folks that were listening last week when that episode went down. I think that it's a good idea. It makes sense that they would try to bring this back now, because it's never really gone out of style. I mean, every 15th thing that I sell at work is Super Mario Brothers related. So whether it's a game for the Wii or for the DS or the 3DS or the movie or a TV show, because we occasionally will get the old TV show in to our store, and all of that stuff. I mean, it's very popular still, very popular. Or a toy, because we sell a few toys, and usually when people buy toys, it's Super Mario Brothers toys. So it's I think it makes sense. I'm excited to see who they cast, because you got to get a good actor with an idiosyncratic voice to get in there and do that. And so it'll be interesting to see how it shapes up.
Oh, for sure. As long as they don't, I'm not even joking. When I went to the press screening for Sing, I sat there and I was like, okay, whatever. I just want to see, I guess, something different than Minions. And they start out the movie. Before the movie, there was an advertisement for The Voice. And I was like, why? Why are we doing this? It's already bad enough that we're basically doing American Idol for Zootopia fans, but why are we doing this bullshit it just reeked of product placement and just gross consumerism, and I hate that shit. But don't worry, we'll get to that when we get to Coco. All right, so the next story, speaking of Disney, is that they want to tackle a Prince Charming movie. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, this is not going to be really good. It's kind of, because we've seen their live action takes before. I don't really think they've done a good job in their live action takes, except for maybe the Jungle Book. But for the Prince Charming movie, they have acquired Stephen Chbosky, who was kind of the punch-up writer on Beauty and the Beast, which is a terrible live-action adaptation. You can fight me on that, but of course, Joel and I agree on that. So there you go.
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
It's not good. But Stephen Chbosky is.
Stephen Chbosky probably wrote the most interesting parts of the movie, because his draft was not the first. It was not the one they used.
Correct.
The one they used was the co-writers, which was Evan Spiliotopoulos. And he's not a great screenwriter. He wrote Hercules. He's done a lot of small projects for Disney, but he's not a big time screenwriter. And so Steven Chbosky wrote whatever was good about Beauty and the Beast. I am convinced on that. But go ahead.
No, Steven Chbosky, straight up, the only reason he was hired on this project is because Emma Watson recommended him for Punch-Ups. Like, that was it.
Yep.
And he agreed to do it. I don't blame him. It was probably good money so he could find other projects. But he's being tackled to write a Prince Charming movie. But here's the twist. They're going to focus on the brother of Prince Charming and kind of how he doesn't live up to the Prince Charming name. So basically, if I was in a family of all good-looking Abercrombie and Fitch models and they wanted to focus on me. So that's what that movie is, folks.
Definitely. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. No, I want to see what they do with it, because if they can kind of tap into the Enchanted feel a little bit, the movie with Amy Adams where she was an animated princess and she, comes into our world in live action form, so it's that kind of fish out of water scenario. I don't know, it could be charming and cute, I guess. I'm not like jumping up and down because like I just said, I have not been impressed with their live action adaptation so far, except for the Jungle Book. I don't even like Maleficent. It's just, they're really, I don't know, they just seem like they're sucking all the passion out of the animated ones and they're just slapping on like the most generic live action adaptation from it, and that's the vibe I get from these movies. But I don't know, maybe this could be different, and interesting. And I like Steven Chbosky's kind of directorial debut, also screenwriting debut, I believe, unless Joel can correct me on that, which he loves to do, which was Perks of Being a Wallflower. And I really enjoyed that coming of age, movie. I didn't read the book at all because I don't read books. Joel knows that. But I do enjoy that one quite a bit. And who knows, he could do something. So as long as they capture like some type of charming, pun intended, feel to it, maybe just cutesy, enchanted movie, it could be decent. But yeah, I'm kind of indifferent. So Joel, take it away.
Really the only super potential this thing has is in Chbosky's involvement. The last time Disney went revisionist with an existing property was Maleficent, and it wasn't very good. It just, there was something good buried beneath it, but they focused way too much on visual effects and world building, and they kind of suffocated the story out of it. And a pretty, solid Angelina Jolie performance, I thought. She was good in it, but it's just kind of a weak movie. But it's an interesting idea if they can take sort of the sardonic attitude of something like Enchanted, or something a little more kind of subversive like Frozen. Taking the idea of a true love is actually in your family kind of thing. If they can take that attitude toward it, where it's something different than we expect, then it could be really promising. As is, I'm very hesitant. Basically, Chbosky is the only reason that I'm remotely interested in this, unless they cast somebody really interesting. So, anyway, it's not super promising right now.
Yeah, it's kind of whatever, but do you expect cash grabs from Disney at this point? We'll get to Coco in just a second. I cannot wait to rip them a new one for that. But yeah, so there you go on Prince Charming. It's coming, but don't worry, it's not about him, it's about his brother, which is basically me if I was in a model family. All right, so the next story, which I know a certain person that's listening will be super excited about, because she is a huge Harry Potter nut, just like Joseph over there. And I can't wait to hear Joel get nerdy about it, because I always love hearing him go into the back doors of these theories and be like, all right, so this is what happened in this time period at this location. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them I thought was an okay movie, but Where to Find Them is basically what that movie was. Newt Scamander had a giant suitcase, and he let a bunch of little critters loose, and he had to go find them. That sounds really intriguing. Not really, but the most intriguing aspect about that movie was Dan Fogel and his aspirations to open up a bakery. That's what I found compelling. But, when you make a movie that's set in the Wizarding world, you don't want the most interesting character to be a human that wants to open up a bakery. So, I thought the first one was fine. It's whatever. But I'm really excited for the sequel because, one, we got a cast photo because we all love these cast photos, and so
like one of those motion photos or whatever. It's like everybody was slightly moving.
yeah.
It's sort of like it was like a Wizarding photo, really. I mean, in the series, that's what it's like when the photographer takes the picture before he puts the film into the potion. I'm sounding like such a nerd right now. And develops it, after that, it's sort of like they're captured in a specific little tiny moment in time, and that's sort of like what the photo was.
It's not like exciting, but it kind of gets you like a little amped up for the movie. Like, yeah, everyone's moving. It's like
you get to see Jude Law, who looks exactly like a young Richard Harris.
He does
in the
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, the photo is not the only thing. I mean, the biggest news was dropping the subtitle to the movie, which is Crimes of Grindelwald. Now, I'll let Joel take it over in just a second, and we'll probably be here for 4 hours, which is fine. But I will say that just looking at the subtitle, hearing it, saying it out loud, it sounds way more interesting than Where to Find Them. So I'm glad that this one's going to take it in a darker direction, more backstory-driven, more character-driven, and I'm really hoping that, because I told Joel this before, Newt Scamander I really don't want to follow. I want to follow more the relationship between Grindelwald, played by Johnny Depp, and then, of course, Dumbledore, played by Jude Law. I want to see that relationship kind of grow and go apart and whatnot. I want to see that. Because I do not want to see Newt Scamander scurrying in these sewers for a goddamn wizard rat or whatever the hell whatever it is. So
a wizard rat.
Yeah, a wizard rat. So, so I want to see Grindelwald and Dumbledore, but I will have Joel take over now and let you guys know what Crimes of Grindelwald will mean, what's going to happen with the story, and where he thinks everything is going to go from here.
Well... The person you were talking about, she will chuckle at the fact, because there is a wizard rat in the series, Peter Pettigrew, Peter
Pettigrew is like the most wizardly rat name I've ever heard.
It is. He's the one who he betrayed Harry's parents, and he disguised himself as a rat, and he's a wizard, so he's a wizard rat. So without knowing it, you made an awesome reference.
Oh my god.
Okay, so the subtitle, The Crimes of Grindelwald, is very exciting. There was this guy on Twitter who was joking rather like sardonically. It was a very sarcastic. He was making fun of it, even though he unknowingly made a good point. He said it sounds like a Holocaust documentary, and honestly, like given the arc of the character of Gellert Grindelwald, it basically like could be because this guy was the Hitler of the Wizarding world, and I know that people hate making that comparison, but talking about like within the context of this world being real in the fakeness of it, he basically was Hitler. In fact, he was probably worse. He killed more people than Voldemort ever did, for instance. Voldemort only really took over the United Kingdom. Grindelwald took over, much of the entirety of Europe and some of the United States. So there's a dark character here. He is truly evil, but he's also really complicated because of his past with Dumbledore. I won't get into that for people who want to be surprised. It's kind of lucky that last week we had the technical issue because I went way too far into this. And I don't want to do that.
Listen, I've been hyping this up for days, and I told her that Joel is like Harry Potter nut to the extreme, and you need to show up, sir. You need to not make me look like an asshole, because I told her specifically that you would go throughout these backdoor theories with characters and shit that I don't even know about.
Well, okay, I'll go a little bit into it. So there's a deep past with Dumbledore and Grindelwald. The reason that J.K. Rowling once said that she felt Dumbledore was gay was not because of his feelings for men, plural, but his feelings for one man, specifically Grindelwald. He, in later life, essentially identified as asexual, but during that period in his life, he became very attracted to this one man, fell in love with him because of the ideas that he was presenting to Dumbledore at a specific point in his life. And then Dumbledore's sister died. I won't say how, but that drove them apart. Grindelwald, the terrible human being I just described, was riddled with grief over that fact and escaped the country. And Dumbledore did not talk to him for decades. So this series is leading up to a legendary fight within the series, within the book series, I should say, that's talked about by Dumbledore in one of the last chapters of the series. When in the movie it's very short, but Harry visits Dumbledore in King's Cross. It's all white, it's like heaven or something. And in the book, there's an entire chapter devoted to that scene where he explains what happened. And the fact that really nobody knows who killed Dumbledore's sister, but it's very dramatic. There's a little more to it than that, and it sort of casts a bit of a shadow over Dumbledore, who in the Harry Potter series is seen as this kind of wise, kind of a regal being. He's a background character, but in the last book, it takes time to break him down a bit. And so now we're going to see him at his most turbulent period. And he will not be openly gay. I just want to make that clear. It's been talked about that he's going to be openly gay. He's not, because he was very secretive and shut off and closed off, extremely closeted, if you will. So, but it's going to be an interesting thing to see, because there's an entire dynamic there that is very complex, and so I'm looking forward to good friends Johnny Depp and Jude Law. They are very good friends in real life. Face off in this way, and kind of tackle these elements of these characters. So yeah, I mean it's a great subtitle. It's sort of chill-inducing, kind of, because we know that Grindelwald's probably going to feature heavily, and so I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm excited to go back to the Harry Potter world, because I am the complete opposite of Joel. I think I've read 2 chapters of Sorcerer's Stone and 2 chapters of Prisoners of Azkaban, and that's it. So I actually have enjoyed these movies as like a fresh set of eyes, and I had no idea any of the twists going in. And so when Deathly Hallows Part 2 happens and all this stuff is being revealed, it's like, that was shocking to me, and I kind of like that. I like being surprised and not knowing anything.
I can't imagine like 3 things basically in the series. One, Voldemort returning, because I know that people who hadn't read the books kind of knew maybe that it would happen, but it's still a big turning point, and it happens kind of sooner into the series than a usual series would have that moment. And then Dumbledore's death in Half-Blood Prince was, I know, shocked a lot of people who hadn't read the books, and also Snape's allegiances.
Yep.
That was kind of the big bowl over moment for a lot of people, and I've had people express shock at all 3 of those things, happening when they did. And one friend that I showed the series to never thought that Dumbledore would die, for instance. So, seeing that happen before the series ended was a big shock to her. So, I mean, it's great, and Rowling's great at that. There's obviously going to be big surprises here. I do kind of agree with you that Newt is kind of one of the least interesting elements of this, but he was a good friend of Dumbledore's, and he's an easy entryway for the audience. So I don't think that telling this story from the point of view of Dumbledore or Grindelwald would help because it's about a battle between them, and that would immediately, set you on one side or the other side, on either side basically, without really giving a full context to the other side. So if you have this neutral third party, then it might work. Honestly, there's a lot of things about this fight that we don't know. So, for instance, it could have been that Scamander is present for it, but she's been very secretive about the details. So this is how we're going to be learning about the details. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of that comes to a head in the fifth movie of this series. So for sure, I'm just as curious as you, honestly, to see how all this turns out, because there are parts of this I don't know. He's very secretive. He would never tell anybody. I think that Rowling said pretty much the only person he ever told the details of this particular part of his life to was to McGonagall, and that's because McGonagall at the time was going through some stuff, and that was basically it. He never told anybody else. So it's not only secretive to us, it's secretive to almost every character in the series, and except for the people who were there. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I just want to see them progress into something kind of magical, just like they did with the Harry Potter franchise. So I'm cool with it. So, but yeah, that photo definitely gets me jacked up, and so does the subtitle. And so moving on to the next story. Speaking of the Disaster Artist, which is kind of picking up steam, Joel and I have both seen that. And there's really no embargo on it, but I will tell you guys that I loved it. And so
yeah, I did too.
Yeah, so Joel and I are on the same page, and it's just one of those kind of magical movies that just kind of catches you off guard, and you're like, who's the main driving force behind it is James Franco, and the guy can do no wrong. As Joel always puts it, he's a man that never gets sleep, and so he's always just running around doing projects.
And this will give him another chance to skip sleep. It's
exactly like he will catch naps in his trailer between takes, and so this is crazy. I like James Franco quite a bit because he is one of these actors that can delve into comedy, into drama, period pieces, biographies. Like, the guy's he's crazy. And so he's being tapped to play multiple man in an X-Men film, his own film. And of course, this is owned by Fox, and so this is kind of like what they want to do in the R-rated kind of Deadpool Logan universe now, excluding the New Mutants and the Phoenix, all that stuff. But I kind of looked it up online last week, and this week I will tell you guys that he's a pretty basic mutant in terms of powers. So he has the ability to clone himself, and he is one of the few mutants in the universe that got his powers at birth. Usually the mutants either get experimented on, or they don't discover their powers until later on. But this is one of those few characters that got it at birth, and he can clone himself in many different ways, and which is kind of amazing, actually, because he has no limit, but that I know of. But he's being tapped to play this. Now, him doing this is not the conversation like Joel and I had last week. The conversation is to what tone are they going to go with. Are they going to go more Deadpool, kind of jokey, poke fun, breaking fourth wall? Is this going to be like some goofy comedy where, like, I don't know, he's got to like stop a bank heist and like he clones himself in many different ways and he's got to change outfits and wigs and all that stuff? Or is this going to be more of like a dramatic piece of maybe tapping into more of a psychological effect of a guy losing his mind, and maybe these clones will represent, I don't know, like how he feels. I don't know, like it could go into a very kind of dark and disturbing, dramatic area like they kind of want to do with the New Mutants, or they're going to go with a Deadpool route where it's going to be more jokey. I think I'm still on the side of what I said last week, which was they're probably going to go more jokey with it, and I'm okay with that. And when you cast James Franco, you're going to be on that 50-50 split where it's like it's either going to be a drama or a comedy, and I think they're going to want to sign him on to do this as a comedy and really kind of showcase his talents, playing multiple roles. It kind of reminds me of Orphan Black a little bit and taking the comedy route with it. So, if that's what they want to do, I'm cool with it. I've never heard of Multiple Man until Joel brought it up last week. So yeah, I'm curious to see where they go with it. And you know what, Fox, they're always trying new things and experimenting with new properties and tones and ratings, and they're just crazy. But I like it. I like the risks that they're taking. So I'm cool with this on a comedy route and even on a dramatic route as well. I don't care which way they go. I kind of want to see it. So, Joel, what about you? Is this a character you want to see, and is James Franco the right person to do?
Well, it's interesting. He's moving from Sony's Spider-Man to Fox's X-Men universe. Pretty neat. Because he's done superhero movies before, and so he's clearly familiar with that whole scene. Last week, for those who didn't hear me, because none of you heard me, I said that I think that they would go the jokey route. I actually have changed my mind after thinking about this. So I think that they are. I mean, it's kind of it's going to be a tough line to tread because it's such a silly premise that if they go serious with it, it could still be silly, and then it's just kind of solemnly silly, which is the worst kind of silly. But I think that they're going to go the serious route because with their new kind of R-rated plan, they got the New Mutants, and I think that's going to go in the R-rated direction because it's a slasher premise. And, they had Logan, which was very R-rated, and the last time we'll see Hugh Jackman, but it signified that it was a new direction for them in terms of the R rating stuff. I feel like Dark Phoenix is going to be PG-13, but obviously Deadpool 2 is going to be rated R. Multiple Man, I feel like they're probably going to go the psychological thriller route because I think that Deadpool is sort of their unknown variable. Sort of the thing that tosses up the rest of the tone, or not tosses it up. What am I trying to say? It's sort of like this little wild. That's a wild card. I think that he's the wild card in this universe where he's the jokey one and everybody else is really serious. So that when we finally see them all together at some point, because we will, unless they go over to Disney and they PG-13ify them. If they keep this kind of R-rated thing going, and Deadpool is with everybody else, then I think he's going to be the jokey one while everybody else around him is being serious, and he's kind of cutting all the tension. So I think that they're going to try to Deadpool, except for Deadpool, they're going to try to go this hard R serious route when they aren't doing team up movies. So that's my theory. Franco is obviously a great choice. I think that he's remarkable in The Disaster Artist. He's really good at dramatic roles when he commits. I mean, he usually commits. Just I made this joke last week, and I'm going to make it again because I thought it went over well. He just doesn't commit when he hosts the Oscars. So essentially, that's my thought. He's also a good comedic actor, so if they did go the comic route, I'm still confident because he's very funny when he wants to be. Pineapple Express, was terrific, great comic role, and so yeah, I think that it's a neat idea too. It's a neat premise. So I'm interested to see where they take it.
I am too, and I'm going to put money on it and say that I think Fox is going to really just kind of take a seat back a little bit and see how the New Mutants does in April. And if that does well in kind of like that slasher R-rated route, then I think that will give more confidence for Fox to actually go forward with this, because Deadpool was an enigma. That thing came out of nowhere and it crushed. Logan did have the Hugh Jackman factor to it, and so he's been playing this role for a long time, and I honestly don't think the R rating really was going to affect people. They were going to go see it regardless. So I think they're going to kind of see and wait to see what the New Mutants does, and if it really kind of takes off, because this can be something completely different. And if it does very well, I think they're going to really kind of push Multiple Man into that, like you said, like the R-rated psychological thriller factor. So, yeah, I honestly think they're just kind of going to wait and see how that one does. But, we'll see in April. Multiple Man, them picking that was kind of surprising. You know what also is surprising is that Sony has money in the bank. They have money to throw around, apparently, but I guess that's what happens when Spider-Man and the Emoji movie is successful. So Sony actually won a bidding war to acquire Quentin Tarantino's next film, because, as we all know, Quentin Tarantino was originally housed under the Weinstein Company, and we all know what happened to that. So he found a new home under Sony to do his and distribute his Manson movie. And Quentin's actually got full control, which is great, because he's the type of person that needs full control. I don't want to see any studio meddling in his shit. That's the one thing I could respect about the Weinstein Company when they had him under him, is that they let him do his own thing. That's cool. I'm down with that. That's not really the story. I guess it's kind of shocking that Sony picked it up. I figured someone else would have done it, but if they got the money to throw around, apparently, then go for it. But the real news was that Tom Cruise is being eyed to play a role in this movie. Now, none of these roles have been assigned yet because, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie. Well, we can probably assume who Margot Robbie's going to play, but, all the others, we don't really know who they're going to play. They're being talked about in conversation for this movie. But Joel and I think we both agree that if Tom Cruise is in this, he's playing Manson. And if he does that, that's going to really put a nice little interesting indent into his career as a role that you would never see Tom Cruise play.
They are the same height. They have, and I know like by inch pretty much. And they both have dark hair. Just add a big beard on Tom Cruise and some extensions, and that's essentially it.
We kind of know what he looks like with extensions, because his character in Magnolia was kind of like that long hippie look. So,
it'll be very similar hair, actually.
Exactly. So listen, I love this. Like I don't ever wish for studios to fail. I want Sony to succeed in this, this business, but when you keep making stupid decisions, of course you're going to keep failing. But if they can really just let Quentin do his thing, cast these people, we could be looking at a possibility of having a Sony movie as like top best picture contender, and that's going to really help them out. So on a business move, I think them Sony getting it, good for them. They're smart. They realize that this could really help them out, because I don't know what it is with modern Quentin Tarantino movies, but if you look at his box office traction, his modern ones are the best ones he's ever done. Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained are his highest grossing movies. Now, The Hateful Eight didn't do that well. It did okay. But Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained, they slayed at the box office. So if you can, market his movie correctly, you can get a really good, not only good quality-wise, but good, monetary as well. As far as the casting goes, please give this to us. Like, if you get Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Margot Robbie, we're looking at, once again, another Quentin Tarantino classic. This is what this guy does. Even if you don't really care for his movies, the guy always makes, like, those type of movies that will be in conversations for, like, classics down the line. Like, this is what he does. And so, I'm cool with all this. Like, I have no tribulations for anything. So, Joel, do you have anything to add? Because, we're both pretty much on the same page with this.
Oh, yeah. I'm always excited for new Tarantino. And with this cast, It's crazy. The synopsis is a little weird because it feels like the Manson thing is in the background of this story rather than at the forefront. So it may be that Tom Cruise isn't playing Manson, or it may be that he is, and he's just going to have this small role in the background. Yeah, I guess that would probably control costs better.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, he has led Christoph Waltz to win 2 Best Supporting Actor roles in his movies, and so what if Tom Cruise is playing Manson in a very strong supporting role, and that's how he's going to utilize Manson as like this kind of potency for these small scenes, and not really have him be the overall character.
Could very well be the case, yeah, and I'm super excited. I mean, having this cast together, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and you're right, obviously, we know who Margot Robbie's going to play. I actually just looked up Sharon Tate, and they look almost exactly the same. So,
dude, it's fucking creepy, how Tarantino gets like actors that look exactly like what he's looking for.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he got an actor to look exactly like Hitler in Inglourious Basterds. It was to a disturbing degree. But yeah, I mean, it's great news, and this is a great penultimate kind of movie for his career. I do wonder about Sony's, oversight. I feel like they'll respect the legacy and let him do his thing, but this is the bittersweet thing with, one of the bittersweet things with the Weinstein thing that all of that happened, and the company's gone now and all that and ruined, but they let him have freedom. So it's just very bittersweet. And yeah, it's exciting, but we will see. We will see how it happens.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's one of those weird things where like Quentin Tarantino was the sole like person that propped up the Weinstein Company, especially with the success of like Inglourious Basterds and Django. It's like now, it's like you said, it's like bittersweet to like now that he's gone, you just see them crumble away. Like especially with the controversy, it's just incredible.
Yeah, very sad. Very sad.
Yeah, I mean, Joel and I both agree. Like this is our favorite story of the week, so we don't even have to ask each other. But what about you guys? What is your favorite news story of the past 2 weeks? Please let us know. And jumping into some trailers now, this is a very interesting.
Wait, did we want to do my?
Oh
awards?
Shit! Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right, so sorry about that. We were supposed to do Joel's Oscar corner last week for obvious reasons, but now he's going to do it this week. So Joel, take it away. Which categories are you going to cover?
Yeah, so y'all can actually hear me this time. It won't just be minutes of silence. Because I'm sort of chuckling sadly at the fact that last week Chase introduced it and then there was just nothing. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, in any case, I'm going to be covering a few categories this week. The first one's going to be cinematography. I believe that there are 5 really obvious contenders here. They're all sort of prestige, very traditionally pretty movies, so something else could pop in, but I feel like this year is pretty strong on those. So where, you have a couple of outliers like Call Me By Your Name and The Florida Project that could easily get in, I feel like the obvious contenders here are Dunkirk, which is, of course, shot by Hoyte van Hoytema, which was stunning work. I feel like that's probably the front runner to win. But you also have Roger Deakins with Blade Runner 2049, which is very pretty. I feel like if Dunkirk doesn't win, we could finally see Deakins win his Oscar. And how, ironic that after years and years of working on film and now he's working on digital, the digital is the thing that gets him to win. But anyway, and then also The Shape of Water is a big Best Picture contender. Look for it to especially considering it's very pretty, look for it to contend in this because, it's a big contender. So those usually register fairly highly for the Academy. and also Darkest Hour, not The Darkest Hour, not the 2011 sci-fi film, but the 2017 Winston Churchill movie. That has Bruno Delbonnel behind it, and he was the guy who shot Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. He also did A Very Long Engagement, and he was nominated for both of those. I think he was nominated for something else, but could be wrong. He also shot Inside Llewyn Davis for the Coens, so this guy's popular, and this movie apparently utilizes a lot of God's Eye View cinematography that's really fascinating. So that could very well be a major contender, and obviously because it's a Steven Spielberg movie, I can't really comment on it, I guess, but Janusz Kaminski's the cinematographer, let's just say. I guess that's all I can say really now that I've seen it, but it's Janusz Kaminski. Come on, it's the guy who shoots Spielberg movies. He's likely going to be nominated. Especially considering next year, he does have a movie with him, but it's Ready Player One, and it's March, and it's a big action thing. So this is going to be kind of the Academy's chance for the next couple of years to recognize him. So they're probably going to get him in there. But if it doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised if either Call Me By Your Name or The Florida Project gets in there, especially considering Call Me By Your Name is shot by a respected... I think he's from Thailand, and it's kind of his first big, English language movie that he's doing. His name is Sayambu Muktipram, and he shot movies for Apichatpong Weir Sethakul. Wow, that's a name. And he's very respected, and he's famous for being pretty particularly fond of symmetry in his shots. So that is a movie that could easily pop in here. But I think that this is going to be one of those years where it's kind of the predictable list of nominees. Good ones, but, just Best Picture contenders or nominees, essentially. So I feel like the nominees are going to be Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, which is going to win, Darkest Hour, The Post, and The Shape of Water. So that's for cinematography. The next one is film editing, and it's kind of the same ones almost. We have a couple of outliers here. Call Me By Your Name is one, again. Apparently it's a very well-edited, well-constructed movie. And also Darkest Hour. I feel like those are a couple of movies that are right outside the sort of contention here. So, but I think that the nominees are going to be Best Picture nominees. I think that we're going to see a category just filled with movies that are nominated for Best Picture, and I think that Dunkirk, which is a perfectly edited movie, literally, it's some of the best film editing I've seen in a long time, is going to win this. Finally, Lee Smith is gonna win film editing. Especially this will feel especially nice after he wasn't even nominated for Inception, which was obviously the best edited movie of 2010. And this movie, it uses time in a way that most Nolan movies don't, which is hard to say because all of his movies use time in a pretty specifically interesting way. But you also have The Shape of Water, which is a major Best Picture contender. You have Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which at this point I think could win Best Picture. So that's obviously going to be a big contender. Get Out is, gaining steam, and it's a well-constructed movie. And of course, The Post, it's co-edited by Michael Kahn, who is a legend and seems to be always nominated for something that Spielberg directs. And so I think that those are going to be the contenders. I don't think that this year is going to be one where there's like this, the fourth or the fifth nominee is something not nominated for Best Picture. I think that there are too many movies contending for Best Picture that are just perfectly edited and loudly so in a way that will appeal to the Academy. So I think that those are going to be the nominees. And then finally, original score. This is the last one I'm doing today. This one is a bit interesting because I feel like we could be seeing a nomination for Johnny Greenwood for Phantom Thread. You know, it's kind of famous that he previously wasn't able to be nominated for There Will Be Blood back in 2007 because he was a member of a rock band, and the rules have changed, and now he's eligible. I feel like he could get in because I've been hearing great things about the score from early word. So I feel like he could get in, and then you have kind of the three obvious ones: Dunkirk from Hans Zimmer, The Post from John Williams, Darkest Hour from Dario Marianelli, and then you also have The Shape of Water, which I think might win. That score is by Alexandre Desplat, so he's a big not upcoming name. He's been around a while, but in terms of wins, he's not won before. I don't think. Might be wrong about that. But then, of course, one of the outliers is the other John Williams score, which is Star Wars. Could easily get in because it's so iconic and there's probably new themes. And Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri has a terrific score from Carter Burwell, who was just nominated for Carol a couple years ago and could very well be nominated again for this. It's a lot of interesting iconography. And so those are. So I'm recapping that one. I believe Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, The Post, and The Shape of Water could be the nominees, with The Shape of Water winning it. So those are my categories for this week, folks.
That is a pretty good little list there. I agree with everything you just said. What are the ones you're going to be doing next time?
So next time, and I just realized this is not for you, audience. This is for Chase. I actually am going to be preparing the next episode. I totally forgot. I got the schedule wrong. So I'll be doing 2 weeks from now, because we don't have an episode next week. We'll be taking a break next week. We have one on the 10th, and I'll be doing adapted screenplay and original screenplay. So we're getting into the big, the main competition, and it's super exciting.
Yeah, so look forward to that, and I can definitely tell you we've seen a lot of movies in the past couple weeks, and some of them are pretty much locks to be nominated in the screenplay category. So that is exciting. So that will do it for Joel's Oscar Corner, and let's go on to some trailers now. The first one up, which is definitely astounding when you look at the amount of views it has acquired over the past couple weeks, and that would be the Deadpool 2 teaser, aka Bob Ross Deadpool, where he's basically painting a picture, making fun of Bob Ross's painting show, and then of course it jumps to fast clips of the sequel, and then it just ends pretty much Deadpool style marketing. I thought it was funny. I mean, I absolutely love the trailer. It's so Deadpool-y that you can't really get angry at it. That it's just so random because that's who he is as his character. I thought the Bob Ross stuff was just, it killed me. Like when he was whacking the brush against the easel at the bottom, he's like, "All right, we just gotta whack it here. We just gotta get the paint off here. Just, all right." And then like he just continue on painting. And of course, the clips from the actual sequel look really great. The cinematography looks darker, it looks crisper. Because the first one, Tim Miller did a good job at directing, but there's really no distinct like visual look. Like, yes, the action scenes were very fun and creative, but as far as a visual look, it didn't really strike me as anything. But with one of the co-directors of the John Wick franchise coming in to direct the sequel, it does kind of have like that darker John Wick feel to it, which is totally cool with me because Deadpool is inherently a violent character, which it plays with that tone, which would actually be funnier given the comedy aspect, so it would be a great contrast. But yeah, I just thought it was a really effective teaser trailer. It still makes me laugh to this day. It played in front of what was it? I believe it played in front of Justice League when I saw it the first time. It didn't play in front of the second time. Interesting. I wonder if it got complaints because the first time it was the Green Band, and there were kids in my theater, and yes, the Green Band doesn't have him cursing, but it still has the sexual innuendos, and I'm like, yeah, I'll bet that someone complained, and there was enough complaints for them to take it out, so that's probably why I didn't see it the second time. But yeah, as a Deadpool 2 teaser, awesome. And I can't wait to see their marketing and just kind of go bonkers and fucking crazy, just like the first one did. So, Joel, did you like this teaser for Deadpool 2? And do you think that Deadpool 2 will have a better marketing campaign than the first one?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't think the first one had a very good marketing campaign. Because, I mean, viral marketing, yes, but the movie looked kind of awful to me before I saw it. I thought it was okay. It did have a weirdly processed look, though. The cinematography was kind of bland, and this looks like it's a little more stylish. It does have David Leitch, or however you say his name, Leitch, behind it, and that's a lot. That's very promising because he's a really, he confidently stages and executes action sequences, and we get a little bit of that in the sizzle reel at the end, which I thought was effective at kind of selling it as this big action thing. And it's just the Bob Ross thing was so funny, just so funny because it's so Deadpool. I mean, kind of casually cursing in the Bob Ross kind of, comforting time on the television, the Bob Ross thing, and he's cursing all over the place, and he's doing this weird thing with his paintbrush. Anyway, it's just, it's very funny, and it's a really cool teaser, and we get a little glimpse, tiny, like a partial glimpse at Cable there at the end with his hand. So Josh Brolin, I mean, obviously fits into this world because he's kind of he's got this gruff demeanor, but he's also very sarcastic a lot, and you can imagine that he's going to be the perfect foil for Deadpool. And so yeah, it was a fun teaser, man, fun teaser. And so is our next one. It's sort of similar in that it doesn't really show us really any of the plot. It's just kind of this like announcement that basically this movie is indeed coming out, and that is Incredibles 2. This is the 14-year delayed sequel to 2004's The Incredibles, which is one of the best Pixar movies, from director Brad Bird, and he's coming back. And it's got all the cast, Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Samuel L. Jackson, even Sarah Vowell, who once swore off Hollywood, who played the daughter, and became kind of disenchanted with the whole thing. She's coming back. And it's, funnily enough, even though it comes out 14 years later, Pixar's kind of played a joke on us by making it happen like almost exactly after the first movie, which it just tickles. Excuse me. It just tickles me so much that they did that. Like,
well, I guess it did tickle you so much because you couldn't speak.
I couldn't speak. I've got water here. I need to drink it real fast. So, yeah. I mean, it's a cute little trailer. It doesn't really tell you anything. It's just this cute moment where, we see Jack kind of emerging from nothingness, and then he goes on a little rampage. He shapes part of the Incredibles logo into the sequel one, and he cuts off part of his dad's hair with his eye lasers, and it's funny because it's Jack. Everybody loves Jack. He's this cute little baby who means no wrong, has no mean bone in his body, and he's just having a fun time, and it's a cute moment. And so obviously I'm excited for this because I would be a monster not to be excited for this. And hopefully, now this is just, I'm not saying this will happen, but this is just something that I decided to say. I really hope that this gets us an Iron Giant sequel or something. Some sort of something related to Iron Giant, because I want more. Anyway, in any case, this is a really funny little teaser.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The Incredibles to me is it's one of those Pixar movies that you could rewatch over and over again. Never gets old. It's exciting. It's funny, and definitely it was in the mist. Like it was in that middle period between what X-Men did and what Spider-Man did and then what Marvel has done. It was like in that really weird middle sweet spot where comic book movies weren't like, they were there and some of them were popular, but it wasn't like the genre like it is now. So when Pixar came out with this, it became fresh and inventive on the genre. And now that we have the sequel coming out in the midst of all these comic book movies, it will be interesting to see if it can cut through the fray and be just as unique and fresh as the first one.
Yeah, I mean, they have a real opportunity to comment on a lot of things because, they used the first one as social commentary of a sort, involving sort of this suburban kind of nuclear family. But, will they do that for this one because they're in the midst of this, some call it oversaturation of superheroes in movies. And, will they comment on that? They also have Jason Lee coming back as the villain of the first one. We don't know if he's going to be the villain of this one, but he's coming back to some degree. So, what part will he play? It's very interesting. There's a lot of real opportunities here. And, just so you know, to everybody, like, y'all know how difficult I am to please in terms of getting up into the top tier of ratings. Brad Bird's 3 animated movies all got an A from me. There would be Iron Giant, which might be an A+, Incredibles, and Ratatouille.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and I'm a big fan of Tomorrowland, but that doesn't really count because it's not animated. But yeah, I just think he's a really, really good animation kind of king, honestly. And I'm just very excited.
Yeah, I mean, it was a funny teaser, like you said. It just gets you in the mood. It's an announcement, and I cannot wait for whenever they drop that full-fledged trailer. 1, at the Super Bowl, and 2, in front of Black Panther is genius marketing, and they know what they're doing. And so that comes out next summer, and that will be kind of Pixar's summer movie. The next, it's funny. It's like, we talk about Deadpool 2 and like The Incredibles 2, and now let's shift gears to a movie that we didn't really even know about until it just kind of came out of the woodworks, because that's how Paramount does. Except for Transformers, which they love to just kind of showboat and really kind of push. But then they have these smaller movies where they're just like, hey, were you expecting a trailer this week? No? Well, bam, we got one. So this one is called A Quiet Place. It's directed by John Krasinski, who is Jim off The Office. And, he's married to Emily Blunt in real life, who is also in this playing his wife. And we don't know much about this movie. But we do know that the basic plot is that their daughter, their daughter, right?
Yes.
So their daughter is deaf, and they're kind of secluded. We don't know if it's like an island but we do know it's like in a very foresty area. They live in a house, and there's something after them, and they have to stay quiet. It's one of these creatures or whatever it's going to be, to where they're, provoked by noise, and so they have to stay quiet. That's the whole trailer. We don't know much about the plot. It's very secretive and very tight-lipped. This family is just trying to stay quiet, and the whole trailer is silent. And I cannot wait for this, because the one thing I will give Paramount credit for is that, yes, they're the sole people behind the Transformers movies, and they're absolutely god-awful. However, they get money from those movies so where they can actually throw at these experimental movies. They just came out with Mother a few months ago, and that was extremely experimental for a wide-release movie. It didn't do that well, but I give them props for trying something different. They're doing the same exact thing here, because I have a theory that this movie will be silent. And I think they will do it, and it's going to piss a lot of people off, and because Joel made a good point last week where, people's attention span is really not that good in theaters nowadays, and we'll get to Coco in just a second, because that thing tested my patience. But having a silent horror film, that could be something to just, I don't even know, man. Like, it's going to make a lot of people angry. But I'm really willing to give Paramount the benefit of the doubt and watch anything experimental they want to throw my way. But the tension was there, the intrigue, the mystery, the way the trailer was cut. I don't even care if it is all silent and they just want to use straight up music and sound design, or even little to no sound design given the fact that these characters have to stay quiet. I want to see this. But I thought it was an effective horror trailer. It gave me chills. And it really just made me super excited about it, and I didn't even know it existed. So it is definitely one of those movies that's going to stay tight-lipped until it comes out, and then, the spoilers and twists are going to flood the internet like usual, but, until then, they're going to keep it super close to the vest, just kind of like what they did with Mother, and really just giving us a sense of the movie and just having us go and experience it for ourselves. So I love this trailer quite a bit. Definitely my favorite of this bunch. So Joel, take it away. After sitting on this movie for a week, or just trailer for a week now, what do you think, first of all, the choice is going to be, and do you think they're going to go all silent with it?
I could not remotely guess the twist, but I can't wait for this. It looks really genuinely frightening. Who knows what's out there that they're hiding from. The girl is deaf in real life, which is a neat little factoid that people missed last week for me. But yeah, she's deaf in real life. She was in Wonderstruck just recently, and from what I understand, she had this role written for her. I don't know if the movie was written for her, but the role was. So that's an interesting thing. I know that she wants to get out there and find characters who are deaf to play. And so this is a neat little way to do it because, it's going to be largely from her perspective, it seems. So, sections of this could literally be silent if they're telling it from her perspective. That's what they did in Wonderstruck. So they just had a score in the background, and I feel like they're not going to have a score here. So it looks really effective, stylish. Krasinski looks like he's pretty much leaving Jim Halpert behind. It's a very dramatic role for him, dramatic turn. And yeah, it just looks really good. He directed it, as well, which is a neat thing. Nice little factoid. And I can't wait. It looks very stylish and scary. And it's my favorite of the week. It's my favorite trailer. So,
yeah. that Joel, that's really confusing because you told. Listen, I don't like to bring up dirty laundry on air, but you told me off air that Rampage was your favorite trailer of the week. Like why would you lie? Like, these people trust you.
It was so funny. So last week, whenever we talked about this, people couldn't hear me say it, but I said that I had fun with the trailer. I have no feelings about the Rampage trailer. I have no feelings anymore. I feel like it just looks like whatever.
So Joel's completely numb and void of all feelings.
It looks painless and all that, but it's the director of San Andreas, and I hate that movie so much. That movie was the dumbest thing, and not in a fun way. And so I feel like this might fall to the same area. It looks really weird and confused, like it's trying to be Rise of the Planet of the Apes meets Kong Skull Island meets a video game, which it literally is a video game adaptation. So I'm in it for Dwayne Johnson because Dwayne Johnson is life, but otherwise it just looks like this dumb whatever kind of action movie. It comes out April 20th. It's clearly trying to be the Fast and the Furious release for him next year. It's, taking advantage of that not really summer date, but kind of a summer date. And, comes out 2 weeks before Avengers Infinity War. So, I don't know. It just looks whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's, sure. It's really funny because in the game, the creatures, the ape, the crocodile, and the wolf, they were people. Like they had like a mutation, and they grew up to be these giant creatures, and they destroyed the city. And if you die in the game, you get shrunken down to a human. In the movie, these are just normal animals that get exploded into King Kong sized creatures. And okay, I also like how they teased at the end of the trailer, like, oh look, the lizards in the water. It's like they're like setting this up to be some franchise. It's like most people don't even know what Rampage is, so it was just weird. And what's even funnier, this trailer dropped last week. I was like, okay, this is Warner Brothers, it makes sense, Justice League is coming out. It didn't play in front of Justice League not only the first time, but the second time as well. So
I actually saw it. What's funny is I missed. Yeah, I know, it's weird. I missed most of the trailers whenever I went to see it, just because of a circumstance involving the food that I had ordered to eat in the theater. And so I had to wait a little bit longer than usual. And so the only trailer that I was able to see was the last one, which was Rampage. So it's either not playing or it's playing last, which is weird.
I don't get it. Like, because I was expecting, I was like, okay, Rampage, whatever, Warner Brothers, but I didn't even get that both times I saw the damn movie. So it's like, okay, like. It's really weird and strange. But yeah, it's going to be a blow 'em up action summer movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson yelling out one-liners going, I don't know, look at that damn wolf on the building. I don't know. There you go. There's your writing, folks. All right, I
did like the line in the trailer where he's like, I was thinking just now that we're basically missing a giant crocodile, which, it's a fun little moment. But then you have the serious moments with him and the ape at the beginning, and it just kind of looks confused. If it's good, obviously it'll be good. It could be fun. It could be that they're kind of selling the drama a little too much, and it's not as dramatic as it seems, and it's just kind of this fun, silly ride, because I think that that's what I want. I just want a fun, silly ride. But
sure.
If they're way too sincere about it, that's the problem. That was the big problem with San Andreas, because San Andreas had the potential to be really fun and goofy and cartoonish, but they were way too sincere to the point that it just felt constantly manipulative. And then they were mixing it with this silly, stuff with all the, Paul Giamatti and all that. It was just too much, and it was an awful movie, and I'm hoping that this one doesn't fall into the same trap. It basically looks like, I think you said it last week, it looks like San Andreas with
That's
big,
what it looks like.
Big animals instead of the natural disaster stuff. Which is very apt, yes.
But yeah, when you hire the same director, what do you expect to get? So
he probably read the screenplay, if he read the screenplay.
Yeah, screenplay in quotes.
The napkin notes that were handed to him, he probably saw it and was like, oh, so it's San Andreas with big animals. Okay, I'll just do that.
The Warner Brother heads were just like, oh, that's genius. Let's do that. So
I will go talk to Dwayne right now, and then they got him. And
it's embarrassing. But anyways, the last trailer is not embarrassing, and I'm quite excited for it. And that would be Strangers Pray at Night. And you're probably wondering, what is this? Well, let me take you back to the year of, what was it, Joel, 2008 or 7?
It was 2008.
All right, so 2008, I was working at the theater at the time, and I got movies for free, and I saw this little horror film that came into our catalog that week, and I was the only one in the theater, and I saw the movie The Strangers, and I actually read up before I saw it, and I realized that the writer and director was from Crowley, Texas, and that was one of the schools we fought in sports with our school district, so it was kind of cool to see a local filmmaker make it to the big time and do this movie with Liv Tyler and Scott Speedsman, and it's like, it's a tongue twister. And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go see a local filmmaker. I gotta tell you, and I'm not downplaying this at all, The Strangers is one of the best horror films of the 2000s. It really is. The absence of sound and sound design is what makes the movie creepy. You figure like, oh, it's just another home invasion movie. Sure, on the surface it is that, but I think it's elevated from how Brian Bertino directed it and how it really just kind of got under your skin and just no sound and these characters moving throughout their house while these killers are just literally behind them, and they would just stare at them and leave it and linger on shots, and it was so effective, and I can't believe that not many people have seen this movie. The sequel is not directed by Brian, but it is written by him, and he is top billing, which means he had the first draft, which gives me hope that this sequel will be good. A little fun fact, it's also directed, the sequel is directed by the guy that did 47 Meters Down, the shark movie that came out earlier this year, which I actually really enjoyed for what it was. And Mandy Moore is like, come on, she's on everyone's crush list. I don't even want to hear it. There's no argument there. But I liked 47 Meters Down for what it was. But for the sequel, the trailer was really good. And I was like, oh shit, this could actually be like a decent little sequel, even though the movie's coming out 10 years later. So it's like, it's just crazy that it took them this long to make a sequel when you have it be a low budget horror film. It just, especially when you have like Jason Blum's walking in Hollywood going, I'm going to make this movie for $10 and then it profits $70 million. So I'm surprised that no one has picked this up sooner, but I'm glad that we're getting something because it does look like it's going to capture the spirit and the essence of the first one. So I'm all for it. I do like this trailer quite a bit. So Joel, what say you? What did you think about The Strangers Pray at Night? And not pray religiously. Pray as in like they're going to fucking eat your face off. Pray with an E. So Joel, take it away.
I actually have to wonder if Johan Roberts, the director, actually made 47 Meters Down in order to make this. Perhaps I don't know. I feel like maybe it was a package deal in some way because they were shot so close together. You know, you just feel like, and for the some of the same people, so it feels like it might have been the case. In any case, the first movie, you're so right. I mean, I think that The Last Shot is a misstep, but other than that, it's so accomplished, and there's not many times that you can say that a movie, like, it obviously has its roots in previous horror directors. You know, specifically, I feel like John Carpenter is a major influence, but at the same time, though, it felt like its own thing. So it was very accomplished. You're right, the lack of sound elevated a lot of the scares in it. It was genuinely frightening in a way that, you know, crap like the When a Stranger Calls remake, you know, didn't do anything for that genre. This did. And so this sequel looks terrific, and it comes out in March 9th, so same day as A Wrinkle in Time. And I'm there. I think it looks superb. So I can't wait. The joke that ends the trailer with the the two cars coming up on each other and the pop song in the background, it's just, I mean, they really pulled out all the stops for this trailer. So it looks terrific.
Yeah, and believe it or not, you know, A Quiet Place and The Strangers sequel trailer is, you know, my favorites of the week, and it's like you would never expect it.
Yeah. And then the Rampage trailer is probably the worst, which is...
Yeah, I agree.
Kind of the biggest movie here. Well, not the biggest movie here. I guess Deadpool 2 is. Actually, no. I would say Deadpool 2, Incredibles 2, and Rampage are probably all around the same, like, not level of hype, but the same scope, kind of, in terms of blockbusters. And then, you know, you have the two horror trailers that are smaller, made for less money. You know, at least one of them's probably going to have that limited release that's also on iTunes, you know, that week. And they both look way better than the other ones. And it's just very interesting. So
it's very funny that a Deadpool 2 teaser mocking Bob Ross is better delivered than the Rampage trailer. I want you to just let that sink in for a second. Like, that just shows you, like, you know, they just don't know what to do at Warner Brothers. And speaking of Warner Brothers, here we go, because we got some movie reviews to throw at you guys. And yes, we're going to be talking about the controversial Justice League. We've had 2 weeks to sit on it. I've seen it twice just so I could, you know, reaffirm everything that I supposedly said on last week's episode before I had to delete it. So that is what we're doing first. I'm excited to jump into this because, as Joel knows and as you guys know, This is my genre, fam. This is what I love talking about. I love this genre. I love to see it thrive. But this is definitely a unfortunate door stopper for the genre. But before we get into the Justice League review and like what we overall thought, Joel, you do the synopsis every week for every movie. So what is this one about?
Superheroes come together, defeat bad guy.
Wow, thanks. Thanks for doing your research there. Yes.
Well, that's basically it, though. I mean,
it is true. It's a very thin plot. But
it's a very thin plot. So basically it follows, of course, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, sort of Suicide Squad. And it all of them come together. Superman later on, it's not a spoiler. He's in the cast list and everything.
He's actually in the poster now. That says
he's
now
in the
playing,
poster
so
now.
He's there now.
So you have no excuse if you didn't realize this, or you probably have already seen it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're listening to this now, but if you haven't seen it and you haven't seen the poster, I mean, whatever, you're living under a rock. So Superman later on, let's just say, but primarily Batman, Wonder Woman, and they get together with Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman. And they have come together to defeat Steppenwolf, which is a villain from a PlayStation 2 game who has erupted from the TV. I mean, wait, I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to take a hit at the villain of this movie. He's this big bad guy who wants to collect these things called mother boxes that literally no one knows what they do because it's never explained, or it's explained too much. But anyway, I don't know what they do. But he wants them for ultimate power, and it's the Super Friends' job to defeat him. And yeah, so literally I just said the thing that I had said before, which is superheroes come together to defeat bad guy. Joel
didn't want to tell you guys this, but he was actually the person that pitched this movie to Warner Bros. And he said it exactly like that to the boardroom, and they're like, "Yeah, I like it." So
it's a new idea.
It's a new idea, guys. All right, so just to give you guys my brief history on this franchise so far, Man of Steel, I actually think is the best interpretation of that character, and I love Zack Snyder's vision on that. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, that theatrical edition, doesn't even exist, doesn't register in my brain because I love that ultimate R-rated cut. I actually think that is a magnum opus of Snyder and within this genre. Excluding a couple things, it's not perfect. The Jesse Eisenberg thing, I'm still on the fence about even to this day. The Doomsday thing could have easily been cut out. Whatever, but I think as an overall movie, I still enjoy it, and it reminded me of just reading a really good graphic novel. Suicide Squad can take a steaming pile of dump somewhere. I hate that thing. It needs to burn away. And I saw that one twice, by the way. The first time I saw it, I thought it was okay, but then the second time, it just became more apparent. I'm like, ugh. I'm going
to use the phrase "a steaming pile of dump," which I've never heard that specifically. I've heard other things, but I've never heard a steaming pile of dump before.
Listen, Joel, when your movie is that bad, then grammar doesn't even matter anymore. So that's what Suicide Squad will get from me. And moving on to Wonder Woman. Joel and I actually, that was our first DC EU movie to review together, and I thought it was entertaining. It was fine. It was solid. Excluding the whole third act being generic at best, I thought everything else was entertaining.
And kind of ugly too.
Yeah, but entertaining B movie. I'm fine with giving it that. So I've only ever Man of Steel. I'd give a solid A. BVS Ultimate Edition, I'd give an A-, and it's only because the whole Lex Luthor thing. Suicide Squad literally gets an F-. I can't stand it. I can't stand the whole idea about it. Just every time I think about it, my brain hurts. Wonder Woman, like I said, a B. So obviously I was looking forward to Justice League, even though it's been divisive ever since its incarnation, except for Wonder Woman. I was still looking forward to it. I'm always up for any good superhero movie. And I gotta be honest with you guys, this movie's okay at best, and that's actually kind of offensive to me because I'd rather have a movie evoke some type of emotion and either me hate it or love it or like it. I felt so neutral with this movie. And like I said, I've seen it twice now. And even after a second time, I still feel the same. Like, let me put it in perspective for you. I will give respect to, like, The Mummy with Tom Cruise, or, like, Home Again with Reese Witherspoon, because that evoked an emotion within me. Like, I hate those movies. Like, that's a definitive emotional response. This movie's even worse than those two because it's so bland and neutral that I can't swing either way. It's like, Like, I felt like I just wasted time watching it. And so it was just okay for me to start out with. So, Joel, your brief history on this franchise and your brief overall thoughts, and we'll dive into it.
Okay, so theatrical-wise, Man of Steel is my favorite so far. I think that, the ending, the climax gets a little busy, a little blow-uppy, which can get old, but before that point, it's a really kind of like a Greek epic version of the Superman. It really confronts the Christ-like imagery in the character, and I think that that's a really interesting way to go for the character, and I completely agree. It's my favorite Superman on screen. I've liked a couple of the other movies. I like the original Superman a lot. I like Superman Returns quite a bit, but it's my favorite Superman movie. And then, Batman v Superman, the theatrical version is, like you said, just doesn't register. It's like a long trailer for the Ultimate Edition, which is amazing. And then Suicide Squad, yuck. Wonder Woman is good. Is a good movie. It gets a little dull in that last act, but we basically have the same feelings about a lot of this stuff.
Which is interesting because fifth time's a charm. You and I actually agree on Justice League as well.
Yeah, so. we feel the same. This is just, it's just like a filler episode. It's
exactly.
Not. And it's a Justice League movie. You'd think that there would be some sort of gravitas here, that, that it would be more substantial than this. Now, I will say, and this is interesting, so a friend of mine loved this movie and has generally liked everything or loved everything from the DCEU so far, including Suicide Squad. So... he told me he loves this, and he kind of went on this long rant to me, not to complain about my opinion, but to kind of explain why he loved it. And he kind of introduced an idea that I'm going to have to go back and look at, and I haven't had a chance to do that. So I feel like in some way my thoughts here are temporary. I could go back with this kind of new mindset and see it a little differently, because I feel like we might be approaching it incorrectly, the whole universe. How he put it was basically, it's trying to recreate. It's basically trying to be a bunch of motion comic books, where it's trying to convey a lot of development of the characters through action and motion. So, like here, for instance, there's a moment where. And it's actually my favorite moment in the movie because of Ezra Miller's face in it, where he's decided that he's going to try to speed run around Superman, and that doesn't really work. And so we get this slow motion sequence, like this two shot between them, where one's they're kind of both reacting to each other, and it seems like it's straight out of the frames of a comic book. And you get that a lot here. So, for instance, like in the flashback, not as effective as the flashback in Thor Ragnarok, not even remotely, but it's still kind of this. It's not a video game cutscene so much. It's sort of like this insert frame from a comic book, and so that's interesting to me. But I'm just going to say that as an asterisk, that it could be that at some point my feelings change on this. it'll not be relevant to you guys. I don't even know why I mentioned it, but because it will never be reviewing this again, so it's not like it's super important here. But it is an interesting idea, but I haven't really had the time to go back and watch it to consider any of that. So right now, I've only seen it once, and it's kind of fading, honestly, because it's been a week and a half. But it's just such a, as it stands right now in my mind, it's such a flimsy story to hang a big event like this on. It doesn't seem like there's any substance. There's a villain. He's this supposedly major threat, even though he doesn't show up a lot in the movie, so it kind of undercuts the threat. He's got these stupid-looking insect warriors that are stupid-looking. Just say that the redundant way, and they come together and they kind of clash a little bit, maybe for 5 minutes, it seems, or so. Unlike the Avengers, which took a long time to tell us that none of the heroes who come together can agree with each other on anything fundamental. This movie doesn't have that, and so it's just a weird, conflicting thing where you want to have fun with it because it's just a lot of action and everything, but it seems like it was just maimed in production. And it seems like there's whole avenues of storytelling here that are lost. And that's how Suicide Squad felt to a greater degree. And here, it just turns the movie into this bland nothing that, I'm kind of going through my whole review, but that's my initial thought. So you go into your positives. I know you only had a few.
Yeah, the positives are very minimal, and which is striking because the grade that Joel and I are both going to give it, we're not like completely flunking this movie. It's just like, we see the potential. Like there could have been something here. It's just that they just don't. It feels like no one's trying, and that has to do with Warner Brothers' fault for having Zack Snyder leave due to a family unfortunate thing that happened to him, to where they go, oh, we have to cram this out of our rectum in like 4 months, and it's like, no, why don't we take our time and push this? And so, whatever. But the positives, I do like the chemistry between every person, even though I think they're basically just pawns in this story that just kind of move it forward, and they're just kind of there. I do like the banter back and forth, and I see the potential within everyone. If you want to go into kind of the acting, because that is, a positive for me, is that I do like Ezra Miller quite a bit. I don't think his jokes work at all for the most part. I think he's a little too jokey, but I think just having him be like the kid within the group does work. Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, I think that works. She brings that kind of powerful essence that you need in the group. Batman, I've always liked Ben Affleck in that role. He's kind of the grounded force between everyone, so that works. Aquaman, kind of weird to be honest with you, but I think Jason Momoa, he brings enough to it, I guess. And actually, my favorite one is Ray Fisher as Cyborg. This guy comes from Broadway, so this is kind of his first major role, and I think the kind of robotic nature of his delivery works very well, given the fact that he's basically Terminator, and so. And I also cared about his backstory the most out of anyone's, because let's be real, even if this was successful, a Cyborg movie would probably be the lowest on the totem pole. So I'm glad we got a little bit more out of him in terms of backstory. And I actually cared about that relationship with his father and just kind of the anger he has towards him, and I enjoyed all of that. As far as everyone else's, their backstory is mentioned within a sentence, and it's kind of outstanding how they do it so quickly and just revealing everything and then just move on. I guess another positive, some of the fight sequences are fun to watch, I guess. My favorite one is, when they are literally like it almost looks like a pig silo, and everyone's working together doing their thing. That was cool to see them work as a group and come together. And I guess I didn't mention this the first time, and you guys will never know our first time thoughts anyways, because we deleted that episode. But the second time watching it, I did kind of like Danny Elfman's score a little bit more the second time. I kind of noticed it, whether it be Batman coming on screen and him kind of having a little sprinkles of the Tim Burton Batman score that he also composed. That was kind of cool to hear. It wasn't directly from the Burton Batmans, but you could definitely hear little essences of it. I do like the Superman theme that he kind of integrated in there when he comes back. Like, I did like the score overall, so believe it or not, that's all my positives. So yeah. Joel, what about you? What are some of the things that I guess were okay to work as a positive for you?
Basically the same things. I thought that, it didn't really know what to do with some of the characters, particularly Aquaman. Cyborg was kind of existed in a single note of, it's funny that you call him Terminator because of who his father played.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's, funnily enough, Joe Morton, one of the greats. And Ezra Miller I thought was fun. The character, he was a little too jokey, but he played him as pretty spirited and fun. So it was a nice little shot in the arm in the movie. And I thought that Jason Momoa had this kind of devil-may-care attitude, but doesn't really know what to do with any of these characters. And this is what I'm going to say. I said it last week. Y'all didn't hear it, but this is the first movie in big budget movie in existence in recent memory with no characters. There's not a single character here. There are stand-ins. There are I'm getting into my negatives now, but
I was going to say, like, is there?
Yeah.
Joel, stay on track.
Sorry, I go all over the place. Okay, so yeah, I mean it's sometimes fun to see the banter. The action scene that I liked was the game of hot potato with I was gonna call it the mystery box. It's a
Even
mother
though it's
box.
called a mother box, Joel. Get your shit together.
Right. It makes a huge difference. Because mother box definitely tells us what it does. The game of hot potato between Steppenwolf and the Amazons on horseback was fun. I thought that, it was heavily green screened and a lot of visual effects, but the concept of the scene was fun. I felt like maybe that scene was directed by Whedon. Felt like it had a Whedon touch to me, because it had this element that sort of followed the beats of that hero shot in the Avengers, where it's kind of following, them like with swoops and all that. And this one felt like that to me. And then I liked the post-credit scene a lot. I thought that it introduced something very well. And
I forgot to mention that. I totally agree. And I guess jumping off from the end credit scene, the one positive takeaway I can take from this movie is the kind of idea that DC will go more of a grounded villain route instead of more cosmic, and that gets me more excited than hearing anything more about Steppenwolf or Darkseid and Mother Boxes. Like, I'd rather them just keep it grounded, like they alluded to in the post credit scene, rather than what they tried to show us in this one.
Yeah, pretty much. And I guess I'm just going to go ahead and get into my negatives. Sorry.
Oh, here we go, folks.
This is a perfect jumping off point, because you just made a good point with, the cosmic villains. We've now seen he was a cosmic villain in Wonder Woman, right? Sort of.
Well, Ares is
sort of from Greek, but he was supernatural.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits. And it couldn't have been less interesting to me, honestly. Once it revealed him, and he was actually a thing in action. And then here we have this fake-looking plastic action figure as the villain, and voiced by Ciarán Hinds as if he wants to be anywhere else than in a studio having his voice like weird and electrified or whatever, and it just couldn't be less interesting. And Zod, I felt, was probably the most interesting that a cosmic villain could be because of his dynamic with Superman, and he also, he looked like a human. He had the emotions of a human, so it was still a grounded version of a cosmic hero. But I mean, and then Doomsday was kind of also semi-cosmic because he was born from a cosmic villain. So, and he was just basically a big snot monster. And so the most interesting villains, I felt, are the ones that have the most contention. So, as much as he was kind of weird and wild in the role, or as much as, I'll just say this, as much as they were weird and wild in the roles, Jesse Eisenberg and Jared Leto were at least interesting. The characters are interesting at their core. The movies kind of, removed that a bit, but they're interesting because they have real menace. And then you have this is just this generic type of menace where every line of his dialogue is, I'm going to take over the world and bow to me, essentially. And it's just, and then he feels like terribly inadequate once Superman comes back. So it's just the least interesting kind of villain. So I agree with you that in that post-credit scene, we get the idea that there's going to be a grounded group of villains, and that's way more interesting to me than probably there are going to be a couple of them in there that are mixed in that are cosmic in nature, but as of right now, I feel like they're going to be grounded, as you said, they're going to be earthbound villains, and that's a lot more interesting to me. The same has been true pretty much for the Marvel movies, because you had, I felt like Ronan the Accuser and Guardians of the Galaxy was kind of dull. Malekith was dull. It has to be a villain with some sort of, if he's cosmic, some sort of connection to one of the heroes in an emotional way that makes them more interesting. So you think Loki or Hela or, people like that, characters like that.
You actually brought up a good point about Ronan the Accuser, because that villain relationship with Thanos is exactly what Steppenwolf is to Darkseid, and it's like, I don't give a shit about their henchmen. Like, if you're gonna make the villain, like, I want the big ass baddie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Make him like, I don't know. If they ever make another Justice League movie, and we'll get to that in a second, then they should make him the villain of that one and get it out of the way, and then focus on more interesting villains. Because even Darkseid, as evil as he is still a cosmic villain. He's still generic. He wants to destroy everything. It's so, yeah, I mean, it's totally true. It's just kind of a bland villain, and a terribly unconvincing one too, physically, because man, those visual effects are bad. And that's my next negative. The visual effects are sometimes really poor. There's a lot of obvious green screening. There's a lot of obvious body doubles. There are times where, in fact, going back to the green screen, there are times where characters are standing against an obvious backdrop of green that has been made into something else with computers, that nothing in this movie looks genuine. I mean, am I wrong here? Like, nothing in this movie looks authentic.
No, you know what's really funny?
It looks completely made in computers. It looks like a video game.
Joel's right, because the second time, I noticed it even more. When they are in Metropolis, it looks fake. There's a scene where all the characters are at the Superman monument, and right behind them is a green screen shot of a city. Why couldn't you go shoot that like on location or something? It makes no sense to me.
Must have. I feel like that must have been in the reshoots, and perhaps they had limited resources. But again,
that's
this
not
idea,
an excuse, though.
No, it's not, because again, this idea that you couldn't move it back is ridiculous. You could just move it back to June or something. Make it a month after Avengers, or move it to March, make it a month. Like they did with Batman v Superman and make it a couple months before Avengers Infinity War, this big thing, have it a couple months away. It's just this idea that they rushed this whole thing into production, and then when they had this terrible thing happen in the production, and they had to, they had this choice to delay it. They didn't take it. They decided, well, people will just want to see it, but people want to see a good product, and we've seen that in the box office numbers that it hasn't done very well. I won't get into. I don't know the placement actually, but I won't get into the numbers here, but they've been very underwhelming, and it's because people think first of all, people weren't like super duper psyched for it. I mean, there were people who were excited, but it wasn't on the excitement of a Marvel movie. It wasn't even on the excitement level of Thor. And it's a Justice League movie, and that's the terrible thing. I feel like the word of the reshoots got around so much that people were like, well, am I going to see a compromised, product? And they just didn't see it. And so they should have moved it back. But they thought that people just wanted a product. And as we've noticed, and also the fact of word of mouth got around, and that has affected it since then. So it's just very bland, and everybody seems to know it. Ben Affleck especially. Getting into my negatives about the performances, he's boring. It feels like he's bored. He's brooding all the time. It's just not a good performance. And Gal Gadot, is fun, but she just stands around and poses a lot. And for me, I thought Ray Fisher was kind of monotonous in ways that were not tied to the role. I didn't feel like his heart was in it. But, whatever. It's not really a movie about performances, so I'll move on. And I guess the voice of Kieran Hines, again, it just feels like he wants to be anywhere else. Anyway, and Ezra Miller I liked, but that was it, pretty much. So otherwise, my negatives are that it feels rushed as a plot. Like it feels like it's rushing through everything. It's trying to get to the next plot point. And when it gets to those, it explains so much through expository dialogue that it gets boring, and it ends up not actually explaining anything. And so you get this rushed product. The studio mandated a 2-hour length. I don't know if you knew that. I think I told you that. But the studio mandated 2 hours. And it's 119 minutes, so they fulfilled that. But it feels like a trailer for a longer movie. And it doesn't feel like a fully formed movie. And so that's my big major negative here, is that it just doesn't feel cohesive. You have it just moves randomly from plot point to plot point, scene to scene, without any rhyme or reason, and it's just dull. It just is completely disconnected from any strong emotion that anybody could feel. That's the major problem with this. So that's pretty much my final negative. Those are the big ones. Could nitpick all day long about other things, but I won't. Superman's lip, for instance, they had to, again, another thing with not pushing it back is that you could push it back in order for Henry Cavill to finish shooting Mission Impossible 6 so that he could shave his mustache. Like, you could do that, but nope, apparently you just have to have it out. So you had to make him look like a talking animal from the mid-2000s in a movie, and it's just, poor decision making all around.
Yeah, someone actually made up brought up a good point that you could shave his mustache and it would be cheaper and actually look better if you digitally put a mustache on him than try to cover it up with like some fake jaw.
Yeah.
And so that has always like astounded me ever since I heard about it. I'm like, well, I mean, Because I was, it was through the grapevine that a couple of VFX artists that worked on Justice League came out and said that Warner Brothers said they would foot the bill for the digital kind of edition of his mustache if MI6 had to do reshoots or whatever. They said they'd cover it, but Paramount was being stingy and said, I don't want that to happen. He's keeping his mustache. And so they were forced to do the whole jaw thing, and it's like, that's just another example of why they should have pushed this, because my main issue with it, I'm exactly with Joel, is that this thing was so rushed, and it just felt so condensed, and I didn't feel like an epic movie. When you're talking about the Justice fucking League, this should be an epic comic book movie. I never felt once like this was on like some grand scale. It just felt like another edition in this universe, and that's very terrible because it's very forgettable. It's just like it was there, it went, and it was gone. My biggest issue with it, aside from the whole rushing thing, does kind of tie into Joss Whedon's quote-unquote direction, because he directed this movie. Zack Snyder did not direct a lick of this movie. I don't care if his name is in the credits. He did not.
I think that he directed some of it, and some of it were some of the flashbacks, because they had a distinctive 300 type of feel with some of the visuals. I believe that he directed some of the stuff with the Flash, because a lot of that incorporates his slow-mo, and it's a very distinctive kind of slow-mo that he uses. It's I believe that he directed at least some of this movie, but less than half. For sure.
Well, and that's where we're going to disagree, because I don't think, as soon as he left and Joss Whedon came in, they did all these reshoots, I just have this weird feeling that like none of his like vision, scenes, anything he did on the project was in there. And the only reason he got credit is because he did all the pre-production and he did all the production for the most part before he had to leave, and so he actually did most of the project. That's why he gets credit according to the DGA rules. But I just, watching this whole thing, it just felt like a TV show, and it felt like an episode of like Arrow or like The Flash, and like that's not good. Like I don't want to see like a television type of big budget $300 million movie on the big screen. I don't want to see that shit. When the movie started, I knew it was in trouble, because it opens up with Gotham. Batman's going around taking some bad guy to make him shit his pants so a parademon can come up, and the whole time the visual look of it just looks so cheap and fake. And I'm like, listen, Man of Steel and BVS might have been divisive, but at least it had a consistent tonal look to it. This does not look like those two movies, and that's a huge problem, because it cheapens the movie, and it looks cheap, it looks rushed, and it just doesn't feel like a movie. Another point, going on to the visual tone, every single time they were in the Batcave, it was so overly lit with like fluorescent lighting, and I'm like, what is this? There's no visual look to this. It's just like they had to light shit and shoot it as fast as they could. And it just pissed me off, because it's like, I will guarantee you that when Snyder was doing the pre-pro for this movie, the storyboards and everything, I'll bet you anything, it looked exactly how BVS looked, and it had this epic, grand, like graphic novel feel to it. And this just looks like a comic book you would get in your Happy Meal when you were a fucking kid or something. It doesn't look appropriate at all to the other two movies. So rushed and visual look are probably my biggest complaints about that. Going to Joss Whedon even more. The scenes weren't, like I said, for the most part, most of the scenes weren't exciting at all. I mean, he directed the first two Avengers, and I think the first Avengers is fine. It's entertaining. And it actually reminds me of this movie quite a bit, actually. But
there's a video, I think Screen Rant did it, that talks about all the similarities, and they are considerable. They're considerable similarities. There's a lot of the characters and plot points and And
some of the jokes when Flash lands his face in Wonder Woman's breast, like, which is it's so awkward. That was already played in the Avengers, and it's like, well, I don't really like it to begin with, so like, why did we do that shit again? It's just, it was so weird how like eerily similar it was, and I just feel like Joss Whedon didn't care. Like, there was no care to this at all. It was just like, we have to get through the motions because we got to get out by November, and it's like, that's on Warner Brothers shoulders, and it's on his shoulders because no one stepped up and said anything, which pisses me off. Going into some of the I mentioned my positives that I like everyone for the most part, but Joel's right. They're basically just pawns in the story. There's no characters in this. They're just there to move stuff forward, and no one really has any substance or weight to it. It's literally like watching someone shove candy in your mouth and just like, you must eat this and enjoy this nutritional thing. And it's like, no, like it's bright, it's colorful, it's just sugar coaty, and just stop it. Flash, just too many damn jokes. I didn't laugh once at anything he ever did except for one thing at the end with him and Superman. That was it. I actually was more interested in his backstory with his dad, which was in 2 scenes. And that was it. I hated the fucking jokes. Moving on to the villain, Steppenwolf is terrible. The CGI looks awful. He looks like a deleted scene off of God of War. The presence like was just, I'm here to destroy shit. And it's like, well, first of all, you don't matter in the grand scheme of things because you're just a henchman. You're a fucking henchman, you piece of shit. Like, stop thinking you're bigger than what you already are because you're not. And that just, it doesn't make you care. Like, his whole, thing is just like, I need to get these mother boxes so I can make Earth look like Apocalypse, which is an actual place that Darkseid lives in the comics. And it's like, well, I don't understand that, like, whatever. And speaking of the convoluted nature of this, the whole backstory with the mother boxes and Steppenwolf coming to Earth before, this one scene highlights the whole entire issues that this movie has. This is literally how the backstory is. Wonder Woman's explaining it to Batman, and she's like, all right, Steppenwolf came on the ship, mother boxes were there, he put them together, and then the Amazonians came, and then the Atlanteans came, and they came on a ship, and, then there was a Green Lantern dude, and like, everyone's fighting each other, there was a civil war that broke out, and it's like, what? Like, why is this, like, being shoved into, like, a 2-minute scene? That just shows you and highlights all the problems with this movie. Speaking of the villain and his inherent blandness and just overall just thin development, and you're probably wondering, like, you're biased because you never harp on the villains of in Marvel. Oh, hell yeah, I do. Speaking of henchmen, Ronan the Accuser, don't like him. Don't like Malekith. Even in Logan, which I think is still the best superhero movie of the year, the villains in that are weak. So the villains in comic movies are an inherent problem all over the place. Not just DC, but this is extremely apparent when there's really nothing to him, and his CGI looks terrible. Because at least with like Ronan and like Malekith, the practical effects on them look good. So it's like there is a huge difference. But I hated Steppenwolf the entire time. Every time he showed up on screen, it's like, please go the fuck away. And even his henchmen, the parademons, like, they feed off of fear. Cool, that's very generic. And speaking of the CGI, all around it looks terrible. I couldn't stand any CGI scene. I don't understand how your movie can cost $300 fucking million and have it look like that. There's no excuse. And so overall, it is a bland, neutral movie that I, as a superhero and comic book fan, I will not buy this movie. I don't want to see it again. And that plays into a huge factor, is rewatchability. I have no desire to see this. I know I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I've said I don't want to see these, in the past. But you know what? If they have a 3-hour long, 4-hour, I don't even care if it's 12 hours long. If they have a Snyder cut somewhere, I want to fucking see it. Like, I absolutely hate alternate editions. BVS was fine because it was the first one they did. It was whatever. But then they did with Suicide Squad, and it's like, ugh, if this is going to be their trend, I don't want to see it. But I kind of want to see it now because I feel like they've bastardized his name. They've bastardized his, vision for this movie. And people are probably saying, like, because I've heard online that there is no such thing as a Snyder Cut. But you have to look at it this way. When Zack Snyder left the project, they shot most of the movie. Like, I think literally everything. I will guarantee you that he had a cut somewhere that he showed to the heads at Warner Brothers. And then that's probably when he departed, and then that's when they were like, oh, we have to do all these reshoots. Because the only reason they do reshoots is after they see a cut of the movie. So my theory is there is something out there that Snyder did. It may not be a fully complete version, because it was the first cut, but it's something. And I want to see this restructured and add all those deleted scenes in there, because there are so many scenes missing. Just from watching the trailers, you're like, wow. Like, they cut a lot of shit out. So I want to see everything. I want to see the full shebang. I don't know how Joel feels about that, but whatever. I'm going on my rant right now, so just bear with me. I want to see it all. I want to see this cut. I want to see his grim look to it. I want it to look like BVS and Man of Steel. This color-coded candy piece of shit movie is just, it's very offensive because there's nothing to it. I'm still going to give it a C, though, because, it's not the worst comic book movie I've seen. It's not the best thing I've seen. It is neutral. I am neutral about it. I don't want to swing up or down with it because it doesn't deserve it. It's just like, it's there. It is a product for the masses. It doesn't try anything different. And that's why I'm giving Justice League a solid C. So, Joel, what grade are you going to give it?
Well, I'm just going to copy and paste the last part of your speech there and give it a C- for the same reasons. It just, nothing new, very bland. Our next movie, I'm just going to go straight into it.
That sounds good. I'm not going to stop you.
Our next movie is anything but bland. So we are now going to review Coco. This is a new film from Pixar, and it comes from director Lee Unkrich and co-director Adrian Molina. And it is pretty much like I'm pretty sure it's the first. Yeah, it's the first in Pixar's filmography to kind of go to Mexico for its story. And this one is about a young boy who has been kind of barred from playing any sort of music by his family, even though he feels inexorably drawn to it, and has always heard that his grandfather was this great guitar player that left his great grandmother, and so they feel like music has cursed them, but he feels such a connection that he stumbles upon his great grandfather's guitar and is swept into the land of the dead, quite literally, because on the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, the dead can visit their living family on a specific day of the year. And so it is a place with, inhabitants. The inhabitants are all skeletons, but they are living. They are essentially living things. I mean, they aren't, but they are. They have the personalities of their former family. They know exactly who this kid is when he stumbles upon them, and he's kind of swept into this adventure of trying to find his grandfather within the land of the dead. And a lot of surprises are in store for him. And for us, although, I mean, I don't think any of the surprises are revelatory per se. I feel like I saw most of them coming, but they are still surprises because the character does not see them coming. And because of that, they are revelations of a different kind. They are emotional revelations. And this movie is stacked with them in a way that I have not seen in a Pixar movie in a long time. And that is why my initial thought of this movie is that it's one of their best films, which is hard to crack the top of their list for me. So before I get into that, though, I do want to side with everybody kind of annoyed by the fact that Pixar decided to put 20 minutes of trailers and a 23-minute short film in front of this movie. And I want to report that Olaf's Frozen Adventure is kind of dull, and also that kids think so too, because I was in the theater, and actually there were two experiences with the kids that gave me great hope for them, for kids in general, at least the kids in my theater. So one, the Peter Rabbit trailer played, and it played to crickets. None of the kids laughed, none of the parents laughed. It was completely dead silent. So that's great, because that movie looks awful. Two, when Olaf's Frozen Adventure was playing, about 10 minutes into it, 10 minutes of the 23 minutes that it played, there was fidgeting. I think that, like, possibly one parent and her child left. And that's because Disney decided to put its audience through 40 minutes of pre-show stuff in front of their movie, which is already 109 minutes, I think, or something, and that's just way too long. So I just want to, like, wag my finger at Disney, even though they can't see it because we're speaking in an audio. Whatever. In theory, I'm wagging my finger at Disney and saying, don't do that. And it seems like they've listened because they pulled it from theaters. So I don't know. Did you get the Olaf short, Chase?
I did.
Okay, you did. So they didn't pull it fast enough. I know that they're pulling it from a lot of theaters. Obviously, that's probably going to take a while. So, because it's not like an instantaneous thing. So I know that they're pulling it from a lot of theaters. I know that New York already has seen it completely disappear. I'm sure that it will be released on DVD later on, or maybe with this movie on Blu-ray or something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. Back to the movie, and I'll let Chase speak on that after a while. But it's not super important. I just wanted to address it before I got into my initial thoughts, or before I handed it over to Chase, I should say, for his initial thoughts. That's not a great idea. To have 40 minutes of stuff before your movie with kids in the audience. All right, Chase, go ahead.
All right, so Coco, the latest Pixar movie, as Joel alluded to. I'm a huge fan of Pixar. I always will. Joel and I were very fortunate to be alive during the birth of Pixar, and its first movie with Toy Story came out when Ty was 5 and Joel was 6. It's like we were at the right age with the start of this company, and just to see it kind of mature up until this point has just been kind of almost like a miracle. It's probably been one of my favorite things to ever see grow up in my lifetime, believe it or not, is just seeing Pixar grow as a company, and just see them come out with these amazing films that will be talked about for generations to come. I was looking forward to Coco. The trailers were good, and I was like, I honestly don't care what it's about. I mean, the main character could literally be building a toilet for 2 hours, and as long as Pixar made it convincing, I'd be like, fuck yeah. So what
an interesting pitch for Pixar.
They'll probably make it too. I don't care what they do as long as Pixar just continues to create these like just rich stories that kids can grow up with and parents can show their kids. Like, it's just, that's the type of company that they are. Yes, they've had some missteps along the way. I'm not saying they're perfect, but for the most part, their record is strikingly positive. And I can tell you this right now, that I absolutely hate Coco for the sheer fact that I have to make fucking room on my top 10 list because it is a goddamn masterpiece. Listen, when I walked out of there, like, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I just rearranged my list like 3 days ago. I gotta do it again. And I'm probably sure I made everyone just crap their pants when I said that. So sorry for the misdirect,
that was
folks.
The most perfect comic pause between I hate Coco and what you said next.
Yeah, no, it's I actually when I determined that I was gonna put it in my top 10, I was like, I want to open up with that joke and see how many people I like make people make their jaws drop right before I say that. So if I got you, congratulations. That was my goal. So anyways, Coco is absolutely amazing. I do think it is perfect. It is definitely the most mature and darkest movie that Pixar has ever done. And I absolutely love it. And right now, I rearranged my list this morning. I think it's sitting at number 3. Which I'm comfortable with because my top 2 I just absolutely love until I see more movies and I might have to rearrange it again, but absolutely love it. And let's just jump into the negatives because there are no negatives. One, I was telling Joel this when I left the theater. One is more of an observation, and I hope Pixar learns from it. And one of them is what Disney did, which was basically fist our eyes with the worst form of shameless plugging I have ever seen. Joel is 100% right. Actually, he's 110% right. That Olaf short was one of the most unbearable things I've seen Disney do in a while. Listen, I've come to the facts that Disney's going to rule the world, and everything they do, for the most part, is a shameless plug. I get that. But when it is so apparent and obnoxious and in your face, that's when I get irritated. I was in a 80% full theater. I was by myself, obviously, because I like to go to the theaters, watch movies by myself and cry, but that's a different story. I was sitting there watching the movie, and there were kids all around me. So because I knew about this Olaf short going in, I was like, I want to gauge the audience and just see how they react to it. There was a lot of moving in the seats. I heard some kid behind me going like, when's the movie going to start? Like, it was atrocious. And when you add 20 minutes of trailers on top of that, you're almost looking at a damn near hour before the movie even begins. And it was completely just misplaced. And I wouldn't have minded if it was like maybe 5-10 minutes of that shit, because there was a movie, I believe it was Moana. I could be mistaken, but there was a recent Disney movie that had like an Olaf Frozen short. I didn't like it, but it was only like 5 to 10 minutes long. That's whatever. I get it. That's a part of the business and it's a part of Disney's image. But usually when they do these short films that Pixar and Disney create, it's from a team of people that work so passionately on this short film, and it gives voices to these talented people in this industry to showcase their work. And for the most part, I'm not saying all the time, but for the most part, these shorts have some type of theme that connects to the movie that you're about to see. This had nothing to do with Coco. This was like literally stopping the movie and going, hi, we're going to show you this 21-minute short film about Olaf, I don't know, jerking off in the snow somewhere, and then we're going to get to your movie. And it's like, no, I don't want that shit. I didn't pay for it. Like, I understand Disney's mindset. They were just like, oh, they get, 2 things for the price of 1. We're doing them a service. But Joel's right. This is a kid's movie. Kids have short attention spans. Do you really fucking think they're going to want to sit through 20 minutes of trailers and 20 minutes of this shit? No. Like I said, if it was like a 5-minute short, whatever, I've accepted it, I move on. But it was 20 plus minutes. No. So that's a strike on Disney. I don't think that was Pixar's doing, because they would never allow this shit. But unfortunately, Pixar is owned by Disney. Disney's the boss, and so they're the ones that control what goes in front of their movies. So I'm not gonna ding Pixar for this. But it is a negative on my theater experience. Not the movie, the theater experience, and I'm putting all the fault on Disney. So that's the first negative. The second negative, this is going to be really hard for me to dance around because it involves certain characters and revelations. But this is not a fault on the movie or the story, because I actually liked that reveal. Like Joel said, it was surprising because it was surprising to the characters. This is more of an observation, because I will say that the reveal of a certain character is very similar to the revealing of a character in Up and how a character is revealed in Monsters, Inc. So what I'm basically saying is they've done this before, and it's almost kind of lazy. So I will just address it and say I believe in Pixar 100% when they want to do a movie. I am all for it, but I noticed this, and I was like, oh, they've done this before. Like I said, I don't think it didn't bother me in Coco because I appreciate it. It's a real emotional gut punch for little Miguel that we follow, and I like that twist. I like the revelation and stuff. It's just an observation that Pixar has done this before, and they need to not do this again going forward. So this is a PSA for Pixar. Do not do this again, because I noticed it, and I haven't noticed it before, where you will basically take a character from what we know in the movie and switch it to a complete 180, and there you go. Like I said, I'm trying to... I think Joel knows what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to dance around it.
I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, because it actually is a real important part of the story. So, like I said, not a negative observation. Other than that, nothing else is wrong with this, and I can't wait to jump into the positives. But Joel, is there any negatives besides the Olaf short that you didn't care for?
Yeah, I already blew my wad about that one. So I will say I do have one hang up. It is not quite the same as yours, because I think that the concept, while familiar for Pixar, of that reveal, I think that what immediately follows it is one of the, first of all, it's one of their darkest things that they've ever done.
Yeah.
Their darkest thing that they've ever done, actually.
It is the darkest thing they've done.
Yeah, the darkest thing. And I think that justifies the choice to make that reveal. But
listen, that's totally acceptable. But do you get where I'm coming from? Like, they've done this.
Oh,
before.
I do. I think that the whole context involving that second reveal kind of informs the first one. But I do get that feeling of like, well, they've done this before, with this kind of character. But my hang-up does have to do with that character. It's more of a plot hang-up than anything. And it's the fact that there is, and it's brief, it's very brief, but there is a chase between that character and Miguel. And I felt like, it's a very brief chase, but I felt like the movie was finding an excuse to give us a chase in a certain way. And it's very brief, so it didn't extend that to a whole 10-minute scene or whatever. But I felt like that was a little bit of a cliche to fall back on, to give us this climactic chase scene. It's a bit truncated than the usual, and it doesn't work out in any sort of favor for that particular character who's not Miguel, the one chasing him. But I just felt like it was that was sort of the thing that was a little tired to me, was the fact that they found this excuse to give us a chase scene. But that's literally, like you, that's my only thing.
I mean, that didn't really bother me, because I was just, jumping into the positives, I was so invested into this movie that even with stuff like that you notice, and what I noticed with a certain cliche that they like to use, it didn't really bother me, because this movie, I'm going to put it simply in one word, it's beautiful. And you want to talk about its story, its characters, its thematic pulses throughout, or its beautiful enriched animation. This is a beautiful movie all throughout, and it's all, like, this just beautiful journey that you take with Miguel and how he discovers his family and his ancestors. And I just to jump upon what Joel said, because we have to talk about it. This is the darkest and most mature movie that they've done. However, it's still accessible to kids and colorful for kids, and a nice introduction into death and how to cope with death and just all the kind of darkness and humanity. It's all there and present, and it's I can't believe they got away with this stuff, to be quite frank with you. But they do it in such a colorful, palated way that kids can kids can appreciate it, and if they have questions, I feel like this is a better, kind of jumping off point for parents to discuss death with children and how to accept it within families. And I found it to be very mature and very, very thought-provoking, emotionally driven. It was such a rich story, just with the culture in Mexico and the overall world building and literally the land of the dead. Like, it's just, everything about it was just so just rich and just emotionally driven, but so mature. Like, I was just kind of dumbfounded that they were able to get away with all this, and two, actually present us with a movie that it feels so grown up. Like, this doesn't even feel like a kid's movie, and I'm kind of just in awe. But yeah, that's kind of like my overall thoughts on it and my positives. That pretty much touches upon everything. But I guess to get into some of the nitty gritty, the animation is just simply gorgeous. Like, I cannot believe how photorealistic their animation's getting. I noticed it when I saw The Good Dinosaur. I didn't really care for the story overall, but that animation, man, I'm telling you, it looked like photorealistic settings, and it's impressive. And they do the same thing here, whether you want to talk about the leaves on that bridge between worlds, or you want to think about the buildings, or just water. Just everything just looks so realistic and just so gorgeously stunning and colorful. The colors popped out. It's so inviting animation wise. And I also thought the look of Mexico looked really good. It looked authentic and just raw, and I feel like these characters were in this setting, like, for real, and not just a computer generated setting, but in a real kind of Mexico setting. So I really appreciate that. The characters themselves are really well designed, especially the skeletons in the Land of the Dead. Very, very playful. It almost felt like a Halloween costume, but I just immediately got into it because I'm like, I actually want to go to this world. I actually want to die today and go into this world, which is a huge compliment. But yeah, so that, and then going on to the voice acting, I thought was really spot on. Everyone brought, literally pun intended, life to these characters, especially the dead ones. I just felt every single inflection in these actors and actresses' voices, to where towards the end, like, I found myself weeping, because I'm like, we all are going to get old one of these days, hopefully, and we're all going to possibly forget, memories and stuff. And it's so real and heartbreaking towards the end that these actors and actresses completely sell it for me. I never felt once like I was watching a computer-generated image with a voice behind it. I felt like I was watching real breathing characters, even the dead ones. I was like, they have more personality and more backstory than some characters in live-action movies nowadays. So I found that to be quite compelling. The music was catchy. It was the type of music that you just immediately get into as soon as they start playing, whether it be the guitar or someone singing. It's really great music to listen to. The humor, I forgot to mention the humor. The humor works really well. There was a couple lines that got me, like, rolling on the floor laughing, like, and I'm sure the kids behind me were, like, fucking confused as to why this lonely man was, like, laughing on the floor. But, like, there was one line, I don't think this is spoiling anything because you guys don't know the context, but Joel knows what I'm talking about. There was one line where one of the characters was like, after what he did, he's dead to me. And then Miguel goes, well, you guys are all dead. So, like, it was just little lines like that just kind of were sprinkled throughout that just, like, made you smile and just made you just enjoy yourself. So the humor is definitely, it's subtle. I don't think the humor is ever over the top, because they're just nice little breaks in between, one, the adventure of these characters in this movie and the energy, and then, of course, the emotional weight of it at the end. I mean, I pretty much touched upon it, and I mean, even with my slight cliche hang-up, I'm going to go ahead and just say it. I think it's an A+ movie. It's in the conversation for top 3 Pixar has ever done. Like, and believe it or not, I'm actually considering putting 2 of them directed by the same dude, which is the director of this film, because the director, Lee Unkrich, he directed Toy Story 3, which I really love. And everything I just said about Coco, you could apply that to Toy Story, and it makes sense because it's the same type of vision and care for the material. So, Joel, I don't even need to say anymore. I think this is definitely one of Pixar's best. I think it will be one of Pixar's masterpieces down the line when we want to consider which ones are absolute classics. I don't need to say anymore, dude. I mean, is there anything I missed? And is there anything kind of new you want to bring up, or any type of takes that you have? I just want to kind of hear you gush about it now. Like, what is your viewpoint on this movie?
Well, you've forgotten the best song possibly since the one for Jessie in Toy Story 2, which is "Remember Me."
Yeah, that was a really good song.
Which is amazing. It's hard for me to cry. It's almost impossible.
I know. It's especially at the very end. You're just like, oh
yeah.
When you take
I got choked up with the final duet.
Well, because like it's interesting how speaking of that song, how the song is portrayed by a certain character in the beginning as like this pop song, and then when it's actually the context of at the end, it's like it does a complete shift, and you're like, oh wow, it actually works in both ways, and so it's astounding.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to address two things real fast. This is to people at large, not specifically the audience, although I guess if you're one of these people, I guess I am speaking to you. So first of all, this is nothing like the Book of Life, so stop saying that it's like the Book of Life.
Okay, so I have to address that, like, because Joel's right. Stop. For all those people, they're just like, oh, well, the Book of Life just came out This is nothing like the Book of Life. The Book of Life
This was in production, I think, the beginning the year, like, before the Book of Life came out. I think it started animation in 2014, and it was before, or 2015 or something, and it was around the time it came out. Not all movies set on the Day of the Dead are going to be the same thing. That's vaguely offensive to suggest that.
Hey Joel, did you know that Jennifer Aniston was in a rom-com in 2006, and then 2 weeks later she was also in a rom-com in 2006, and they're basically the same thing, right?
They're the same thing.
They're the same fucking thing. So no, it's like, listen, you're going to have similar settings and themes in movies. That's going to be apparent, but it's the matter of approach. So it's just stupid.
The other thing, this is a little. I don't like getting political on this show, but this is vaguely political, at least. That there's a lot of criticism right now, in generally speaking, in film criticism, being overrun by. I hate calling them liberals in a bad way, because I tend to lean that way, but. There's a lot of white liberal critics right now saying that this movie is some sort of like populist idea of Mexico and the Day of the Dead, when most of its the people who conceived it are Mexican, and almost all of the actors are Mexican, with the exception, of course, of John Ratzenberger, who shows up in everything. Stop saying this. The people, like, I've been hearing a lot of critics from Mexico praising this movie for this sweeping us into a culture rather than being like overwhelming us with caricaturizations of that culture. It's not what you think it is. Stop being offended on the behalf of people who are not offended. It doesn't make you look good, and it doesn't.
So stupid.
Yeah,
I will just address that just real quick, and I'll let you take over. Is like, this is not anything news. This is not groundbreaking. But Joel and I are both Caucasian males, so we are not seeped into the kind of Mexico culture. But I can tell you, just watching this, I thought you could tell like there was care to this. Like it just like there was so much detail.
If the caricature. My goodness me, I hate these two words are so similar. If the characters were caricatures, we would know. You would be able to tell. Yeah, you would be able to tell, because they would be always. Well, first of all, if they were a caricature, like an Americanized caricature, they would all be wearing mariachi costumes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's the thing. And plus, people have been calling the guitarist in this movie a mariachi band member. He's not. He's a guitarist. They're different things. So, and that's also another thing, and that's from the same critics criticizing that they're calling him a mariachi artist. He's not. He's a guitarist. Get it right. If you're telling us that the movie gets it wrong, get it right. Like that's a general rule for the rest of your life. Anyway, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to make an assertion that every single aspect of this movie is perfectly within like perfect Mexican culture, because to some degree, yeah, it's Pixar, it's a big company. They are going to go broad strokes to some degree, but they stop when you get to the specifics of the characters who feel real. They don't feel like, the horrible racist Mexican caricatures that you see a lot in American productions. They feel real, and they feel genuinely tied to this culture. The Day of the Dead seems to be respected. It's a holiday that's taken seriously within at least some people within that culture, and clearly with these people it is, and it feels real. And so I just want to address those things because it's directly tied to the major positive, which is, for me at least, the fact that it sweeps you into this culture before taking you on the journey. You get a full picture of how much Day of the Dead means. And then you get to the adventure, which is completely involving moment to moment. There's not a moment here where I felt bored, where I felt like this was going on too long, where I felt like they were making the point already, please stop or whatever. I felt like there was surprise after delight after twist on expectations, and it's just remarkable to see this young boy who is an entryway for the audience. Sure, I mean, I feel like to some degree the reason that his character exists, without giving anything away, is to reunite two others. Let's just say that without giving context. So in that way, there's a passive element to his character, but I found that as fascinating as anything else because the story is so much bigger than him. And so the story might be centered on him in a narrative way, but in a bigger emotional way, the story is about all of them. And it's about this whole family. And you get the sense of a family here, and that's very important. So that's a big one. The animation, like you said, utterly amazing. I mean, it's getting to the point where whenever you talk about a Pixar movie and you say this is the best animation since, it's just whatever the last Pixar movie was.
Exactly.
So like for me, like right now, I would have to say, because there's one I haven't seen, that this animation is the best Pixar animation since Finding Dory. But it's probably realistically the best animation in Pixar since Cars 3, because I'm sure that Cars 3 was more impressive than Finding Dory, which in turn was more impressive, in those little shades, than Good Dinosaur, which was more impressive than Inside Out, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it even boded true for Cars 2. I hate Cars 2, and it's infinitely less effective than Toy Story 3. But on an animation level, man, that thing was impressive. Brave, not a very good movie, impressive. Monsters University, I like less than most people, but I like it. Impressive. The animation in this company is getting to the point where we won't be able to tell if we're watching a real background or an animated one.
Exactly.
So I don't know if you got this, but right between the Olaf short and the movie, there was that little featurette with the animators. Did you get that?
Yeah, it was the one with Lee Unkrich and I think a couple of producers.
Yes.
Talking about the Land of the Dead scene where they built all the buildings and stuff.
Yeah, where they were like, it has 80 million lights, like individual lights. I mean, it's just the care put into it is clear on the screen. It's one of the best animated movies in a while from anybody, and it's just beautiful to look at. And then I'm going to address this. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but one after another in the whole third act of this movie, I said it at the beginning, but I'm going to at least go a little bit deeper into it. Revelation on revelation. Not maybe to us, because I feel like at this point we've seen everything and we're able to predict everything. So on a predictability, quote unquote, level, it wasn't, a bunch of surprises in that way. But for the characters, all of the characters, there was revelation after revelation, and it's very easy for a movie to crumble under the weight of those. But this is a movie that doesn't do that. It earns every single one of them. And I was just constantly delighted by the fact that it was turning its ear, or the movie was like turning on its ear and giving us something new to think about and to confront in the characters, a lot of whom are not who we suspect they are, in various different ways by the end. And it felt like such a deep human story because of that. Despite that little flourish of the chase, which I still feel is a little less important than they might have thought it was. Other than that, I mean, it's just such a perfect climax because it confronts the real humanity in these characters, the complex humanity. Weirdly enough, and this is crazy to think, but it's true, it actually reminded me in that way of Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which finds, which I know you haven't seen this yet, but it finds the complex humanity in every single one of its characters, whether it's the main one, the woman looking for justice, or the racist cop. And it finds that there are sympathetic points in each of these characters to where the most sympathetic of the lot is who you don't expect, and everybody else is very flawed. And it's the same thing in this movie, where you just don't expect these characters to make the movements that they make. And you were talking about the revelation involving that one character that seems to kind of be borrowed from a couple of the other movies. It's then followed by a really dark one. Then it's followed by a total, complete change of pace when something else is found out. And it's just all of these twists on each other. It's fascinating to watch them do attempt those and succeed. And it's just amazing. So yeah, I only had that one negative, and I'm going to give it an A, just because, again, I've said it before, A+, I have to have no hang-ups. So I do have that one hang-up, and I think it's just resting on that cliche at that time kind of stuck out to me. So because of that, it's an A. But honestly, it's like my number 3 or 4 this year. So it's, looking back at my list, I don't really keep – I know you keep the actual notarized list. I don't right now. I probably should do that. But
it's very helpful.
But yeah, I can imagine. But right now, I feel like it's somewhere around number 3 or 4. So we're in the same boat. For Pixar, it might mean number 2 for me. Mm-hmm. Behind my number 1 is Inside Out. Toy Story 3 is up there. I think that's number 4 or 5 for me. But I mean, a lot of those movies get an A, so it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. But, at this point, besides a couple of hang-ups in their whole lineup, they're mostly A's.
Yeah. I mean, there's only a couple of them that I wasn't a huge fan of. The Good Dinosaur. I wasn't a huge fan of Brave. I hated Cars 2. I thought Bug's Life was okay. I'm not as fond of that as most people seem to be, but those are pretty much the 4 that I'm not fond of. And then everything else, it's like a huge jump upward.
Yeah.
In quality. So it's they're either really dull 4 times, or the rest of the time they're really thrilling, and this is one of their very best. It's amazing, nearly a masterpiece, if not a masterpiece, and it's one of the best films of the year. So
I have a prediction, because you're right. I usually don't give A+ unless I don't see anything wrong with it, and even with my quote unquote negative, it's just more of an observation. Like I said, it didn't really bother me, but I have a weird feeling that you're going to watch this again and you're going to be like, you know what, that chase scene doesn't really bother me, and I'm going to go ahead and just jump.
It might have been one of those first impression things where I'm seeing it and I'm into the scene so much that it kind of stuck out, even though maybe it's supposed to, for instance, and it just doesn't feel that way right now. Mm-hmm. And it could be. I mean, I'm absolutely going to buy this. I'm going to watch it a lot. It's got amazing rewatchability factor.
Yes.
Despite the again, like what you were saying, and I guess I didn't really talk about this, but this is the last thing I'll mention. The last positive is that you're right. It feels mature and grown up and dark, but it's just as purely enjoyable because it doesn't I mean, because it's also very funny. You got the silly dog. It is so
dude,
funny.
that fucking tongue is just it kept flopping all over his face.
The funniest thing. And you have the dog. You have just the attitude is there's just so much fun to be had here, but it is mature and it is dark, and it's just a perfect combination of the two. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you there.
And I have to say this again because I don't think people are expecting it. One of the revelations, it is the darkest thing they've ever done, and I still can't believe. I sat there with my jaw on the floor because I'm like, I can't believe they approved of this. Like, it is like some of the sickest, like, twisted stuff I've seen in a Pixar film. I'm like, holy shit, they just got away with that.
Not even the fact that they relay it to us through dialogue.
They show it.
But they show it to us. Like, they actually show it to us. And that's ballsy.
It was shocking. I rarely use shocking in animated movies, but like, because Joel's right. They could have easily just told us and moved on, but they showed it, and I'm like, what are these kids behind me thinking right now? Like, they're probably scarred for life.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So,
but yeah,
all right, so I'm gonna get into predicting our top 5 because I have stayed away from it.
Oh shit. But yeah, no, I just real quick, Joel over there, A+ for me. So let us know what you thought of Coco. Does it rank up there with the highest Pixar movies? And what did you think about the Justice League? Since we did talk about that as well, I'd like to know if you actually did enjoy it or if you hated it. Please let us know. I would like to hear your opinions. But yes, moving on to the box office results. It is Joel's week, and believe it or not, we have a lot to discuss. But before we let Joel guess, just real quick, to catch you guys up from last week, Justice League did open with 93 million. 93, 96, I forgot, but it's around there. But that's really low for these type of movies. So now that you know the perspective, I'm sure Joel is curious to see how much it dropped and how much it made, and if what did Coco do and all that stuff. So Joel, the hints I will give you. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Coco, wide release, and that's pretty much it. There was a couple of limited releases, but they almost made it to a top 10 area, but they were honestly not that high up there. But yeah, Coco is your only hint, so good luck.
Wow, so the other one, okay. So I know that there was The Man Who Invented Christmas, right?
Yes, it opened up in 626 theaters, and I'm going to say it out loud, came in at number 12.
Okay. I didn't realize it wasn't, like, high. Okay. So that makes more sense, because I thought it was in, like, more theaters than 626. So I was like, wait, what? Because I thought it would make it. So that shifts it a bit. I'm going to say number 5. Daddy's Home 2 is hanging in there. God help us all. I haven't seen it. I'm just guessing. Number 4, I'm going to say that Wonder dipped down to number 4. Number 3, I'm going to say that Thor stayed there, because I think it was number 3 before. And then number 2, Justice League. And then, but I'm hearing it's kind of close. Maybe so, or I heard early on that it was close or something. So I'm going to say that number 2 is Justice League and number 1 is Coco.
I will say this. If Joel would have switched his 3 and 4, he would have got it.
Oh, okay.
So you were close. And believe it or not, Wonder is actually one of the biggest things I've ever seen happen in the box office in a while. So we'll get into that in just a second. Number 5 is Daddy's Home 2. Like Joel said, God help us. It actually barely beat out Murder on the Orient Express at number 6 with 13,250,000. Daddy's Home 2 is doing particularly less than the first one. Its budget is $69 million. I always love doing that. And then, of course, its domestic haul is 72 and worldwide is 87. And a rule of thumb for you guys to know if it breaks even or not, take the production budget, double it, considering all the theater takings and all that shit, and then add on marketing. So what is it? 138 to double that, and then with marketing, for shits and gigs, let's say 150 to break even. Right now, it's at 87 worldwide. Not good, but I have a feeling that Daddy's Home 2, just like the first one, will probably do pretty well on streaming and rental.
Yeah, people constantly rent the movie at work.
Oh,
the first one.
So I mean, it's going to do fine. Number 4.
In fact, when we just put up at work, we just put up a Christmas thing, recently for movies and stuff, and Daddy's Home is prominently featured, so people had the chance to buy it, and they bought a lot of those copies. We had like 9 up there, so
right,
it's
Joel,
a popular.
You're
it's
gonna
a
have to give
popular
me
movie.
the number to your manager, because that seems like a crime against humanity that's in the forefront. So that's a whole nother story. Number 4 is Thor Ragnarok with 16.7 million. It only dipped 22% from last weekend. Wow. Pretty good. But you guys have to keep in mind that this was also Thanksgiving week. People had Fridays off, so this was definitely a movie-going weekend. Thor Ragnarok, doing very well. Production budget, 180. Who gives a fuck? Because it's made 790 worldwide. That's really good for a Thor film, and especially for an MCU film. It actually just surpassed...
Just a few bucks.
Yeah, just a little bit. It actually surpassed Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 for worldwide. And I think it's at number 7 right now in the Marvel rankings in terms of money. So that's pretty good, if you ask me. Number 3, get this, is Wonder with another, because it opened up last weekend, another 22 million. It only dropped 19%, and it gained 76 theaters. This is definitely one of the biggest movies that Owen Wilson and Julia Roberts have had in a while. Its budget is unknown, but I'm gonna take a stab at it and say maybe 30 million-ish. And even when you double that with marketing, right now, domestically, it's at 69, and worldwide, it's at 70. So this movie's not going to stop, by the way. It's going to keep continuing to do money like this, like huge numbers, and so it's going to make a shit ton of money. I didn't think it would, but hey, Lionsgate, I got to give you props. You've had a lot of flops recently, but with like this, Power Rangers, and a bunch of other movies in your slate.
The Big Sick did well.
Yeah, it did well. So, like, Lionsgate, you made some smart decisions this year. Congratulations. Before next year when you go down the toilet again. Number 2, Joel is right. The rumors were true. It's close-ish, but it's not, like, extremely close. Number 2 is Justice League with 40 million. And I'm sorry to announce that this movie is DOA because it dropped 56%. It's done. This movie is finito. It might do well overseas, but here it's done. Domestically, it's at 171. And in the foreign markets, it's made 309 with a total of 481. They're estimating that this movie needs to make about 650, maybe even 700 million just to break even. I mean, it might break even. That is a good possibility, but as far as making profit, it's going to make little to none. And that's disappointing, but then again, when you throw out a rushed product, what do you expect? And number 1 is Coco. Now, I will reveal the 5-day gross first before I reveal the weekend gross because it came out on Wednesday. Its 5-day gross is 71 million, and for the weekend, made 49. So that's not bad. That means it made about, what is that, like 20-something million from Wednesday to Friday. It's actually pretty good. So Coco, its budget, if it... Pixar, you're stingy with your numbers. Stop that. They never really reveal their budget info. If I had to take a stab at it, since there was really no-name actors, maybe 70 to 80 million, maybe possibly 100.
There were a few. I know that they're all Mexican, but there are most of them. But there were some. I mean, maybe not high priced, but there were some name actors. I'll get into that after you get into this.
Okay. So. Well, I mean it opened up and it did very well. With 71 million domestically, and 153 million worldwide. However, it did open up in Mexico like a month ago, so it's been doing really good business over there. So I don't even know what it opened up with over there, but I do know that for 153 worldwide, with Mexico leading the charge, and then now with us, like it seems like it's going to do pretty well going forward because it does, like Joel said, have a lot of rewatchability factors to it. All right, so get this. I don't think I've seen this percentage hike in a long time. So to touch upon some smaller movies, Lady Bird, Joel's favorite ever, came in at number 11 with another $4 million, and it jumped up 60%, so that's good.
By the way, I did review that last week. Of course, that episode went down the drain, so I am reviewing it on our next episode on the 10th. So
correct.
Y'all will still hear my thoughts about it.
Yeah, and by that point, hopefully I will have seen it too. The Man Who Invented Christmas only got 1.3 million.
Oh,
Good
man.
God. So that's pretty bad. Call Me By Your Name, which is a Oscar frontrunner, opened up this weekend in limited release with 4 theaters. Not bad. 404,000. So about 101 per theater average. It's not bad at all. Last Flag Flying, it went up 51%. Still not making money, but I mean that's good for it. The Darkest Hour also opened up in limited release with 4 theaters. It did significantly less than Call Me By Your Name. It only got about 44,000 per theater, so 176 total. Not good. Not good focus features. All right. Getting into some other ones that are kind of astounding. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri jumped up 300% with 4.4 million for this weekend, and right now it's at 7.6 million, which is way more than I thought I would ever get, which is great. Get this. Roman J. Israel Esquire, the new Denzel Washington movie, came in at number 9 with 4.5 million. So you're like, okay, whatever, it's Denzel, he can still get a crowd. It jumped up from last weekend in theater count from 4 theaters to 1,669. Its percentage jump is 7,182% from last weekend. So I'm not good at math, Joel, but that seems pretty good to me. So it's not. I mean, it's an expensive movie, but from that jump, that's really good. That means even with little to no marketing, Denzel Washington literally can open up a movie. Like, that's impressive. So that's pretty much it on my end. Joel, you said you had something to add?
Yeah, so the Coco cast, I mean, they're Mexican, so they're not, huge like names known in America, but a couple of them are. There's Gael Garcia Bernal, played, well, I guess I can't really reveal his character. I'll tell Chase after we stop recording, because his character has a lot to do with this plot. Maybe Chase knows who I'm talking about by that point, but anyway, he was that guy. Benjamin Bratt was the man. I can't reveal these characters. I can't really talk about them.
So it's best to just say there were some names in there. And
yeah,
there was
also Edward James Olmos was had a bit role in this. This was surprising. There's a playwright. I learned this from Matt Zoller Seitz over at RogerEbert.com. There's a playwright named Octavio Solis who has a voice role, and the reason that this was significant to Matt Zoller Seitz is because Octavio Solis taught him in college, so that's neat. He's a famous playwright now in Mexico. He had a bit role, and also, and this is even weirder. Okay, Alfonso Arau, who directed the movie Like Water for Chocolate back in the 90s, which was made, I think, the 90s or 80s or something. It made a bunch of money at the box office and stayed in theaters, get this, for 26 weeks back in the 90s. That's unheard of right now because of the whole theater system. But back then, it was a little more commonplace that movies stayed in theaters for a long, long time. This stayed, I think it might have been longer than that, actually. I think it was almost a full year, and it made a ton of money. It was a huge, huge movie, both here and overseas, and so he has a bit role. Anyway, it is a pretty starry cast for in terms of Mexican kind of actors and voices that are popular over there. So it's significant that they were able to get all of those people. a pretty neat little factoid. So
Yeah, for sure.
the kid's an unknown. I don't think he'd ever done anything. But
yeah, I was also looking at the numbers, and there's a couple more interesting things. The Florida Project only dropped 0.3%, so that's kind of cool. And get this. Friend Request still in the top 50 with $162, and it only dropped 54%. And it lost the theater. How is that even possible? All right, whatever. I don't even know the math on that, but all right. So this is
it's literally just somebody is. You know what I'm guessing? I'm guessing this. This is my theory. Somebody's listening to this show, and they're doing this. And it's somebody like maybe with the theater industry, and they're just like, okay, we're going to torment Chase Lee of Reel Me In, a movie podcast, and we're gonna keep sending people to this movie. We're gonna keep it in a theater. That's what I'm guessing.
So what you're saying is we've made it to the big times now. People actually listen to us. All right. So, and one last thing before I let Joel introduce next episode's topics. This is actually some of the best news I've heard in the midst of all the kind of sexual harassment scandals. Wind River was under the Weinstein Company. It was their last final one. Well, that and Tulip Fever before the company basically was going to get, shut down. I didn't know it actually made money. So, I mean, it didn't make money this weekend, but overall, I was looking at the numbers. Its production budget is $11 million. Right now, domestically, it's made $33, which means it made a little bit of money despite the company behind it. So, because I don't ever like to see movies suffer from assholes, and so I'm glad that Wind River actually succeeded in the midst of all this kind of crap. So
yeah, I don't love the movie, but I'm glad to see anything succeed that's small like that, especially in the wake of this.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up. So good for it. I'm kind of with Joel. It's whatever, but I mean, yeah, good for it. So that is it for the box office, guys, and that will do it for this week's episode 208, the 4-year anniversary episode. It's been a long journey, but we're going to continue on going. And then speaking of the next episode, 209 in a couple weeks, because we're taking a week break. Joel, we are going to be slamming them with a bunch of indie reviews. What are we doing next time?
Yeah, so it's kind of up in the air about how many we're doing, but we're definitely doing The Disaster Artist that opens wide that weekend, or wider, I should say, after the specialty release on December 1st. And then Darkest Hour is kind of big. It could be both of us who review that, or it could just be me. We'll see. Hopefully Chase will have seen Lady Bird by this time, in which case I think, would you mind both of us reviewing it? We could probably do that. And then also 3 Billboards. I'll be talking about that one. So could be those 4, possibly a 5th. We will see, but all of them fairly short. We won't go super long on any of those. But nevertheless, that's kind of the big show. Originally, what was going to happen before last week's debacle was I was going to review Lady Bird last week, and then a couple of smaller releases, including 3 Billboards this week. And then, we know what happened, and it's a long show, clearly. So I just decided, you know what, that, we're taking a break next week, but that second week doesn't really have any big, wide releases. I think that Morgan Freeman, Tommy Lee Jones movie comes out. We don't care about that. So might as well review some smaller movies before, of course, that following week, which is Star Wars. So we'll get some of the big Oscar contenders out of the way and talk about those. Yeah.
I should probably bring this up since it's going to literally be the next episode after the December 10th episode. The Star Wars episode is going to be on a delay. It's not going to be on Sunday. It will be the following week at some point. That's all I'll say. We haven't really nailed down a time or day yet. I'm just letting you guys know. Don't expect it on Sunday with everyone else, which I actually think is good. And I actually think that's even good for like this week's episode with pushing Justice League, is that we're going to let everyone else fight over the review space or whatever, and we'll come out a little bit later. That way we'll, after all the hype has died down, we can kind of give like a fresh perspective on it. So, Yes. Is it going to be delayed? Yeah, but I think that will actually be better for just kind of us breaking away from everyone else reviewing it that weekend. So just letting you guys know about that.
Okie doke. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I think that we have, I guess we'll just go through December. So, and then of course we'll have our big Christmas Eve episode, I guess it's on that day. We'll record it earlier.
Yeah,
we'll record it earlier.
We'll record it earlier, and we'll schedule it for.
I just meant
Eve.
like it's probably gonna be put up on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, it'll be a nice little Christmas gift for you guys.
Yeah, that one we'll be reviewing probably a couple of big Oscar contenders as well. I don't really know what yet because that week's kind of packed. There's 3 release dates and stuff spread out across all of them, so I don't really know. I can't remember what we have scheduled, but.
It's very possible that we'll have that we might have Molly's Game as one of them. Possibly. Yeah. We wouldn't be able to talk about the post yet, or would we? I don't know. But in any case, Call Me by Your Name might be one of those because I want to try to talk about that one. So we'll see. And then the big last episode, I guess. We're gonna have. I'm not gonna reveal the guest, but we will be doing our top 10 of the year. It'll be recorded slightly earlier than this, but it'll be posted on December 31st. And we'll be having a special guest with us, and that'll be because he's a kind of a big dog in the online film critic world. So I'll just keep that under wraps for now. But we will have a fairly awesome guest that week. So. That's kind of the rest of the year for you guys. Yeah, it's getting down to the nitty-gritty, guys, and then I can't wait for the top 10 episode of the year. I always love those and hearing everyone's lists and what they put on there because I know Joel's just going to get super irritated that I have like a bunch of like goofy ass like rom-coms and comedies on mine. He's just like, God damn it, there's so many other good films. When
you have The Fate of the Furious as your number 1 of the year, proclaiming it a masterpiece, I will literally end the call. I'm just kidding.
Joel, will we still be friends if it's number 2?
No.
Well, what the fuck? You have to give me some type of leverage, whatever. Yeah, that will do it for this week.
That's in my bottom 10, whatever that is.
Well, that's another topic for discussion. But yeah, that will do it for this week's episode, guys. We will be back in 2 weeks with a bunch of indie stuff flying your way in pretty much preparation for the Oscar season. But before we get into next week's episode, we got to end this one. So, Joel, where can the people find you online?
You can find my writing at joelonfilm.com. Again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I'll have my reviews of Coco, Last Flag Flying, and 3 Billboards all at some point this week. I just kind of turned my brain off and didn't think about it. I've written 2 of the reviews. I just haven't written Coco yet and need to have like a brain to think about it. But you can find other reviews there, and you can follow me on Twitter at Real Joel Copling. You can also find my writing at Dallas Movie Screenings. I haven't written there in a couple weeks, but you can find some there. And yeah.
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Real Chasely. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get, reviews that I don't do in this show. I will post them there. And of course, like Joel said, we're both on Dallas Movie Screenings. And yeah, in terms of this podcast, please like it, spread it around, share it, do what you have to do to let people know that this is the definitive movie podcast. And hey, listen, if you made it through this entire long 3-hour-long podcast, which is okay because we're not coming back next week, you made it through this entire thing and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we convinced you to be one. That is Joel. I am Chase, and all the links will be in the description below for all our social medias and anything we discussed. And then the intro and outro music is done by my friend's band, Fervent Roze, also in the description as well. We will see you guys in 2 weeks, and speaking of them, let's play that music. Bye, everyone.
Bye.